Okay, everybody look for a seat. Lots of unoccupied ones, especially in the front row. All of you guys that sat in the back row, you're going to have to give a speech. It's like going back to class. Okay, so first a report from closed session. City Attorney?
Thank you, Mayor. There were two items on the agenda. Both were discussed, but there was no action taken, so there's nothing to report.
Honest. Someday we'll come to a conclusion. Okay, next our invocation from Joyce Baldwin. If you'd all please rise.
I did not realize that all those children were going to be here, and I had picked out a children's prayer. So I think it may be appropriate. Oh God, educate these children. These children are the plants of thine orchard, the flowers of thy meadow, the roses of thy garden. Let thy rain fall upon them. Let the sun of reality shine upon them with thy love. Let thy breeze refresh them in order that they may be trained, grow, and develop, and appear in the utmost beauty. Thou art the giver, thou art the compassionate. O thou kind Lord, these lovely children are the handiwork of the fingers of thy might, and the wondrous signs of thy greatness. O God, protect these children, graciously assist them to be educated, and enable them to render service to the world of humanity. O God, these children are pearls. Cause them to be nurtured within the shell of thy loving kindness. Thou art the bountiful, the all-loving.
You join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On May 29th, it was my privilege to represent the city and present a proclamation in honor of Correctional Officers Week to the staff of the Lompoc Federal Correction Complex, and to once again hear the names of the fallen officers from across our country. On June 3rd, I presented a proclamation to the Lompoc Police Chief, Larry Ralston, proclaiming June 3rd as the California Special Olympics Law Enforcement Torch Run, and the torch was live and running through Lompoc with Larry. So, good things. This evening we have some presentations. First, I'd like to invite Assistant Superintendent Sid Haro and talk about some future and ongoing events at the Lompoc Unified School District. They got a lot going on.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Boy, the year's over. The kids are done and they're at home, and parents are in charge for at least a little while. It seems like I say this every year at the end of the school year. It did seem to go by pretty fast. But I'd like to just share with you some highlights of the year. This past year, we were able to re-engage with all of our support providers who we signed contracts with. And I'm really excited because there were some people that we were just signing contracts with who it became a habit without really checking to see, are the programs working or not. So what we've done is we've been really critical in terms of taking a look at data. One is Power Reading, the United Way, which we're really excited for a couple of reasons. One is the program works, but we're able to also partner with the city and other stakeholders in bringing it on. And the intent is certainly to target our students. That's why we're there. But it's also really important that we're just not we're not separated from our community. And the Power Reading program is going to be open to all community members. So we're really excited about that. There's been a renewed targeting of health and wellness in the school district. And in reaching out to supporting our principals in our schools, we've initiated an anti-bullying program. The Orphala Foundation has continued to support our food services with quite a bit of resources, and as part of that, we've been intentional about bringing onto our monthly principal meetings ways that they can actually support health and wellness in a meaningful way without pointing a finger at them. Principals, we keep asking more of them, just like teachers. And so rather than telling them what the regulations say, we're working with them to just identify fun ways that they can support the health and wellness of their children. Also, we're continuing to work together with Ashley Costa in her role as the director of a health and wellness organization where we're targeting the Safe Routes to School and also our bike rodeo, which has grown considerably. And next year the district is looking at expanding it to every school in the district. Literacy has been the focus this year. And the early data that we're getting back really speaks volumes in terms of how we're starting to mind the store in helping our kids. And we're not doing it alone. As we continue to engage with our partners, and we call them all partners in education, we remind them that if we sign a contract with somebody, that doesn't mean that they could see us next year to sign the new contract. What we're doing is we're working hand in hand with all of our partners and reaching out to our parents and community members throughout the year, and also ongoing support with professional development for our teachers and principals. I'll loop back to that in just a moment because we've initiated something called Collective Impact, where we are currently working with over 70 partners who have been doing work with the district, but now we're aligning their work collectively. If we could see a short video. This is from one of our partners in literacy. And this is an early cut. I'm sorry, it doesn't have the subtitles, but there's a short portion where a parent speaks in Spanish.
Lompoc began in 1873 when some people waded ashore from a sailing ship at Surf Beach, and we've been growing slowly and steadily ever since. I guess I would say we're a working class community. We have a little bit of agricultural orientation.
I have seen a change in this city. I've worked in areas where there aren't English learners at all, and here at this school, a big population of English learners.
We are 89% poverty, and we have about 50% of our students are English learners.
They have one foot in a hole and the other one on a banana peel. How do we help them out of that hole? How do we get that banana peel out of the way to give them an opportunity?
Fatima Flores. I'm in the school La Honda. I'm in 3rd grade.
Nosotros decidimos que ella se viniera para acá, para los Estados Unidos, porque hay como más oportunidades de que aprendan pues el inglés es lo más importante.
I'll forward you the subtitled version.
It's important because go to school because you learn more things.
Yo pregunté cuáles escuelas eran mejores y pues me dijeron La Honda está muy bien para Fátima.
Language and reading are the root skills from which every other bit of learning evolves.
So educating a child takes a lot of people. The first place that it starts is in the home, when parents start speaking and reading to a child.
It's a parallel process. Parents and other community organizations have been and would like to reach out to the school district to find out how they can effectively partner with us.
I'm Luis Sanchez, and I'm the Vice President of Academic Affairs at Allen Hancock College. We offer classes that are sometimes called remedial education, or classes that help prepare them for collegiate level classes. We experiment with what we look to highly effective practices across the state and across the world, really.
Things that we've brought to the district, such as Imagine Learning for students. In the 21st century, we know that it's really important, and this is one of the tools for language and literacy, which is, we find that's really, really important that we need to bring to our students.
Fatima, who has made incredible growth, she came to us at the beginning of this third grade year with absolutely no English.
When I grow up, I want to be teacher.
She started working in the Imagine program. She started working in small groups so she could acquire letters and sounds so she could begin reading. She has just flown. The Imagine program gives her that quiet time to focus on listening to language, hearing herself talk in English.
That things, and I am learning Imagine Learning to read, to take tests, to a lot of things.
This growth is she's really made remarkable progress.
The relationship with Imagine Learning, quite frankly, has been amazing. We have held them accountable for helping us along this journey, but likewise, they have pushed our own thinking in terms of to be cognizant of what we need to be doing.
We found a partnership that really wants to be a partner in this, to say, let's see these kids. We don't want to just come in one time, 1 year, and here's our product and use it. Let's work with you on a day-to-day basis to, if things aren't going exactly like we thought, let's fill in the gaps.
Those are the kind of organizations that we want to partner with. The kind of partners that manifest those core values that are so important to what we know will help our children.
The phrase is, it takes a village to raise a child. You know, it starts with the school board making a policy, it goes to the superintendent and the administrative staff that implements the policy, it goes to the principal, and then the teacher who's teaching it to the students.
And so the importance of us working together to help our students become highly literate and highly conversant in language skills is the foundation.
These are going to create partnerships for these kids learning early here, go to the colleges, and come back. What will that do? That'll help us here in the district with educated people to come back and teach in the district, to start businesses in the district, which ultimately will lift up the district as a whole.
The goal is to bring up the literacy of the whole community and to help the parents help their children. It will be a complete game changer.
Educated child can think beyond themselves. They can start dreaming, and they will change the world to make it better. If we do not educate our students, they will find their needs to be met in different ways. And unfortunately, I've seen that happen, and they go into gangs because they feel like this is someplace that I can belong. So let's open up our doors and have them belong to school.
We're just really excited in the school district to be intentional about reaching out and working with all of our partners. I know that Chris is here from the United Way this evening. What we've done this year before we broke for summer break is, for the first time, we presented our principals with a matrix of support programs. So they will know before the year starts what programs are appropriate for their children that we're signing contracts with and bringing on and minding the store around from pre-K all the way through 12th grade. And so we're excited about partnering with United Way also. Quite frankly, they're the ones that they transition into from Imagine Learning. A couple of things we're looking forward to. Technology is important because that's a new literacy with children. By the beginning of school next year, or at least the first quarter, we should have over 3,000 laptops or tablets in the hands of children throughout the district. And that will continue to be a focus until we have a 1-to-1 ratio. One of the shifts are that in the past we used to build computer labs. We're no longer doing that. What we're doing is tablets and laptops are so inexpensive and can do everything desktops can do that if you put them on the carts, you can move them from classroom to classroom as needed instead of being tied down to a single lab when children have to schedule to get in there. So we're really excited about that. Two other things that we're looking forward to bringing to the community is in November, we're going to be sponsoring our first technology, quite frankly, a conference. It's going to be opened up to every Lompoc school district employee, both classified and certificated, but we're also opening it up to outside educators and community members. So people will be able to sign up for this conference. We'll be looking towards having that every year, and that will bring business to the city. Another thing that we're doing is El Camino, which had been the home to our adult education center. And it used to be a middle school, but was closed up. Now we have signed agreements with enough tenants to make it a community center. So we are going to be using the El Camino campus to serve our clients from pre-K all the way to our seniors. And it's going to be really exciting. More information will be coming. We're going to have a community fair to open it up to the public as a kickoff the first weekend of August, and we'll be sending you more information. So a lot of good things are happening in the school district. We're trying to be really strategic and all along the journey to ensure that we support our teachers and our principals with both the resources, though, and the professional development, because our superintendent continues to reiterate that he wants to mind the store, but he will not hold anybody accountable unless he intentionally provides them with the resources or training to do the job that we want to do for the kids. So we're looking forward to a new year. There's a lot of work in front of us, but exciting things are happening.
Councilmember Legal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Howard, you mentioned El Camino.
Yes.
And you said a community center. Expand on what you mean by the community center. How is that going to function?
Sure. We're still going to retain the adult center, but we've also invited and have engaged the WIB board to be present. So we'll have organizations from the EDD to a youth training program on campus and have services on select days for our community. We're also going to have a placement for pre-K. Also, there's a program for pregnant teens that we're going to be bringing on that used to be located up at Maple, our continuation school. We want to bring it to more of a central location so more of our clients can make use of it. We're also bringing on CET, Center for Employment Training, which will offer job training for those interested parties who won't necessarily want to go to Hancock or other post K through 12 institutions, but they offer training in really employable fields where people can get jobs. Also, the mayor had reached out about a for-profit organization called NCTI, which they do training and licensures for paramedics and EMTs, and so they're going to be also having some space there. We're also expanding the YMCA services where they won't have rooms, but they'll be making use of our fields to expand programs for parents and children for outdoor activities.
Sounds like a really great use for that facility. You know, here in this room, we've had discussion recently about the literacy programs in the city. Is there any potential for a literacy program being offered through them?
Yes, as a matter of fact, what we're doing as we sign contracts with our partners, like the United Way and others, they're really universal contracts. So the children, I mean, that's our target, teachers and children in the classroom. But we feel it's also important to be able to use those at home, in the community, but also in our after-school programs and in places like the community center that'll be open.
Okay, well, thank you.
Sure.
Councilmember Starbuck?
Mr. Harrow, you mentioned a lot of laptops and tablets coming in. I sit on an ROP advisory board, and one of the big issues is that the cost of the books, nothing was below $100, and most of them were very close to $200. Will this provide a big savings in the school district that can be applied back to the ROP programs then with those tablets?
You know, ROP is really important because we have some really vibrant programs that we want to expand in the district. They'll be accessible to all of our programs, but we're a bit away from 1-to-1 ratio. When we finish, they will be directly available to every student in every classroom. We won't reach that next year, but they'll certainly be available to all the programs, including ROP. And as a matter of fact, I'm glad you surfaced that because Lompoc Unified School District just joined a consortium of school districts that include Orcutt, Santa Ynez, and Santa Maria, along with Hancock. And the target is our ROP programs and working towards having those pathways so our seniors, when they graduate, can get one of three things, either an AA degree, advanced standing at university, or a certificate for some pathway through ROP. So it's going to be slow because although the goals we'll set, I think, are going to be on target, but the conversations with all of the engaged parties will take a while to kind of carve out the appropriate agreements. But we're targeting that.
Councilmember Humdahl?
Yeah, very good. Exciting to hear what your program is going to be. One thing, how are you letting the community know about it? You tell us here tonight, the one thing about it, you have quite a program,
yeah,
but you got to also tell the community what you have and how they can use it.
Right. I think that is really on target. I was just having a conversation this evening with Chris, but also it's been a common thread that educators, you know, we work hard, teachers work hard, and principals work hard, but we're not PR people. We don't come to the table with those skills of really messaging exactly what we're doing. So this past year, what the superintendent has done, which I think is right along those lines and is what we should be doing, when we engage in any new initiative, what we're doing is one of the avenues we're using to communicate to the community is the Lompoc vision. That's one area. Another area is we will no longer sign a contract with any support provider unless they agree to do parent nights, parent outreach nights. So we're going to continue to reach out in that way. We've applied. We haven't heard back yet, but I believe we're going to have tables at the Flower Festival and then at our Friday night street celebrations. The Unified School District will have a table that will be manned with district office staff to be able to just hang out with parents and meet with them and let them know what's going on. As I mentioned, we're going to do the big kickoff at El Camino to inform the parents what's going to be available there, along with other organizations that we can connect them to. But that communication piece is something we're trying to continue to do effectively. So any ideas, we're open to them, but we know that we need to do a better job than we've traditionally done.
I think that's what's real good. Like I say, you may want to talk to grandparents, aunts, and uncles too. You know, so everybody in the community knows. Now, as a former school board member many years ago, state didn't tell you how to do this, did they?
No.
Fantastic. It's one of the best things I've heard in a long time. Because they caused us more damage than anybody ever did. So I know I'm real happy because your program didn't sound like the state involvement. And
none at all, as a matter of fact.
So I'm real pleased to hear it. But yeah, there's all kinds of organizations out there. You need to let them know, and so they'll spread the word real good.
Right.
So, thank you.
Sure.
Councilmember Costa?
Thank you, Marilyn. And you're exactly right, Councilmember Humdahl, and that's part of the reason why I've invited Mr. Haro and Superintendent McDonald here on multiple occasions, because I think that this is one great outlet for them to spread the word, because I know I got a lot of questions about the school district, and you have to explain it's not really in our jurisdiction technically, but it's good to know the answers now about Common Core, and it's good to know the information about Imagine Learning and about all these initiatives that are going on, so we can kind of be ambassadors for the school district as well, and then vice versa. Hopefully they can help us be ambassadors for the city, generally speaking. So, you know, I think so highly of you, Mr. Haro, and I really appreciate you coming. The fact that you're even here, to me, speaks words, so thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
Well, from my standpoint, I want to thank you guys for jumping in with NCTI and making that happen. As you know, I've been working with them quite a while, and we were stumbling over buildings, and all of a sudden you fixed it. And it's just such a great tie-in with the healthcare curriculum at Lompoc High School. It'll provide an opportunity for the young folks who are completing that to go directly into these programs and have very marketable job skills at a pay grade I wish I'd had when I got out of high school. And also provide an opportunity for the people that are in the school to participate in helping you guys as part of their curriculum. So it's a giant win for everybody. So thanks a lot. Appreciate your hard work, and the superintendents too.
Thank you, Mary Lynn.
We look forward to your briefing next time. You always have good news.
All right. Have a good summer.
Thank you.
We'll see you.
If the computer will cooperate.
Thank you so much for having me here, and we can start. I'm Purnima Wag, and I represent Veritas Government Financial. And the first thing I want to do is thank the City Council and the Mayor for actually having me here doing this, and also Brad Wilkie and Dean Albro from Finance. They were the drivers to help me get the revenues, expenditures, and budget numbers for the last 3 or 4 years, which was extremely helpful. And last but not the least, all the department heads and the staff, they were absolutely wonderful in helping me out doing what I'm doing with the numbers. They were exceptionally good with all the information. So thank you again for that. I wanted to quickly introduce myself, since this is my first presentation to the City Council, and so I just quickly wanted to introduce myself and tell people who I am. I am the founder and president of Veritas Government Financial. That's my own company. And I obtained an MBA in finance. I've been doing financial analysis for 18 plus years. I'm sorry, I should be doing this. And essentially, I've been working in revenue cost management and operational auditing for several years now. And I did this, what I'm doing here with the City of Lompoc, I did this stuff with the municipality of Anchorage. And it was quite interesting working for the municipality of Anchorage. And I hope to bring that expertise here to the City of Lompoc. So essentially, this is what I do. I assist city governments with revenue enhancement and budget analysis. My initial findings when I started April 1st, the city has a fairly old system, which is OpenVMS, the old financial system. And I wanted to actually go ahead and have a revenue and expense report put into Excel. But that sort of became a little cumbersome, since I couldn't get adequate month-to-month data from OpenVMS, because it's mostly just numbers that go from year to year. So consequently, I thought maybe a good idea would just be going to the department heads directly and posing them the questions regarding revenue enhancement, expenditures, and their budgets. And I think that was the best choice given the circumstances. And that is what I went ahead and did. So I talked to the different department heads in finance. I talked to Brad, to Public Works, Fire, Police, Library, ECD, and the Utilities departments. And after having talked to all of these departments, there were several issues that came up, but the big issues that sort of warranted immediate attention were sort of regarding the revenues and operational audits for the following three departments, which are finance, public works, and the library. So I sort of honed in on these three departments and started doing an operational audit on certain specific issues. So within finance, very quickly, talking with Patrick Weinmiller here, I looked at the transit occupancy tax, also called the TOT, and it's at 10%. And we had two hotels which were still delinquent in back payments as of April 2014. As of January 1st, 2014, there was an additional 2% tourism fee that went into effect called for the TBID, which is the Lompoc Tourism Improvement District, and that was to be collected or is to be collected on top of the 10%, so it's a total of 12%. The tourism district signed the contract in December 2013, I believe, with the city, and the finance department and the city is waiting to receive the tourism district's documents. There's the budget plan, the insurance certificate requirements, and a bunch of other paperwork necessary right now while we're waiting to disperse the $75,000 that has been collected on the tourism district's behalf. So that's where we stand regarding issues in finance. Oops, I think, okay. As far as the 10% TOT is concerned, Dean Albro in Finance has successfully signed a payment contract with one of the hotels for back payments. And so the first payment on the contract was already made, I believe, in May of 2014. So that is going fairly well in that direction. The city attorney's office is also working with the city in conjunction with the finance department to resolve back payments with the other hotel as of the first week of 2014, and this is an ongoing process. So that's also in the works. In regards to the Lompoc Tourism Board, the city attorney and the attorney from Civitas Advisors, I think, were sort of ironing out the paperwork to disperse the $75,000, and I was told that the contract was going to go through and completely ironed out and signed by both the parties by the end of May. So I think that's where we are right now as far as ironing out these issues. Then I moved on to Public Works, and Public Works was one of those departments I found fairly exciting because there's quite a few issues that sort of needed to be looked at. And one of the first issues was that Kevin McCune, the department head of Public Works, asked me to look at was the River Park Campground on Highway 246, and it has seen declining revenues, especially if you compare the 2012 totals of $193,942 and comparing those to the totals in 2013, which is $127,418. And that's a variance or difference of $66,524. So it's a fairly marked difference there. They also saw declining occupancy rates from about 80% to between 30 to 50% between May 2013. And this happened because there was a policy change that was made to discontinue long-term camping beyond 2 weeks. And so when this policy change was made, there was a pretty big slide in revenue. We saw a difference of $66,000 between April of 2013 and May 2013. So that changed the whole picture as well. There are also general issues regarding the general maintenance and the process of fee collection, which is fairly manual at in regards to the campground. So I'm covering all of these. Continuing with findings within the Public Works Department, I also wanted to address the 2013 events costs, and this was for a period of 6 months. And I show a number there, and this actually came from the Public Works Department, this number. They spent about $85,128. That is fairly high considering it's just for 6 months. And this is for any events that were put up within city limits. I also looked at point number 5, which is a fairly compelling set of numbers there. And this was how much the street division spent on completing sidewalk repairs, replacements with their own crew, equipment, and materials. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. The numbers here are fairly compelling. As I said, if you look at 2010, it is $281,897. For 2011, $227,260. For 2012, $312, and for 2013, it's $285,835. If you add up all of those, it's $1.1 million that the city is spending in street division costs, pretty much at our expense, which is a fairly large number. So this is essentially to take care of sidewalks in front of homeowners' houses, and essentially we're footing the cost for this, which is $1.1 million, and it's fairly high. So the recommendations for Public Works, again, the two big issues there were declining revenues for the campground and the declining occupancy rates. So I believe that Kevin and his group did have a resolution 1401 to increase the fees, update rates, and restore the long-term stays within the campground, which we're expecting that to significantly increase both revenues and the occupancy rates to what they were before and maybe even higher. As far as the event costs are concerned, there's various expenditures associated with the events within the city of Lompoc that should be part of I believe should be part of a budget planning process. I don't think that the enterprise funds should be used to pay for these event costs because they're really costing the city of Lompoc a pretty penny. As far as the street division, sidewalk repairs and replacements, as per California Highway Code sections 5610 and 5611, sidewalk repairs in front of homes are the responsibility of homeowners in most cases. However, the city can work with the community in finding alternatives to cover these costs. So since it's 1.1 in the last 4 years, I think that definitely something can be done about that. The next department that I looked at is the library, and there's a lot going on at the library as well. And the first things here to note are I looked at the sources of funding for the library, and the first source of funding comes from support and contributions. And all this information actually came from the former director of the library, Ashley Chavez, and she was very gracious in giving me this info. The support and contributions comes from the following. We get community donations through utility bill donations, which is fairly significant. You get random donations. You get support groups such as the Friends of the Library, which also help out quite a bit. The Library Foundation through endowments. And then you have the Turducken Dinner Group through annual contributions, which I believe also has been fairly successful. The other sources of funding within the library are the library operations, and these are various different kinds. You've got the library fines, you've got online fees and fines through Black Gold, which is the system that essentially covers all of Santa Barbara County libraries. You've got the self-check that has resulted in higher collection rates, which is very, very interesting and actually really good. You've got grants. You've got Grossman Gallery rentals, commissions, and sales. And, of course, you've got the copier, which is a some amount of money that comes in through that. Then you've got the government sources. You've got the County of Santa Barbara giving the City of Lompoc Library $352,000 annually. The City of Lompoc, in its budget, we see a $398,207 number there. Unfortunately, the state of California, as you see, has now defunded the libraries, so that funding is defunct. So that's a sad situation right there with the library as far as the state funding is concerned. As far as the recommendations for the library are concerned, per Ashley Chavez, who is the former director of the library services, the library's main source of funding, besides government source, is through donations. So she mentioned to me that the library, and this is fairly important in my opinion, the library got about $9,463 from just 256 donors in 2013 through the single or recurring gift form, which is fairly significant because I think that this is something that we need as a city to go out there as far as donations are concerned. If 256 people can give $9,000, that's pretty significant. The city of Lompoc has about 14,000 utility users, and Ashley Chavez printed out 15,000 flyers for about $1,000 in early May 2014 to include within the utility bills with the hopes that people may donate to the library. And so I'll be following up on that to see what the results are of this donation drive in a few weeks, and I believe the donations are coming through, they're trickling through steadily, slowly but steadily. And this is the flyer that Ashley Chavez sent. It's a very attractive flyer. I think it really did quite a good job, and it was sent to 14,000 utility users. And I think it's a very good way of actually fundraising for the library and getting donations coming in. As far as the library, the recommendations for the library are concerned, my recommendation is, we have 14,000 utility customers. It would be an excellent idea to send a library flyer once a year with the utility bills. You can just put it through the utility bills once a year or maybe every 6 months. And hypothetically, even with a 20% return rate, 20% of 14,000 people donating, say $5, that's fairly significant amount of money at $14,000. And these are, again, just hypothetical numbers, but I'm being fairly conservative at $5. And I know that a lot of people give much, much more when they give to the library. So because it's such a significant part of the community. We have utility bills sent in the mail, and they have the gift form printed on them. I know that the utility bills have a blurb with the gift form that go out with the utility bills. But what I would like to see is when you have new utility applications, like I'm one of them, I just moved to Lompoc, new utility applications should also have an area where people can come up and sign up for donating to the library or, the beautification fund or whatever, have something like that. Because I think there's a fairly large turnover of utility users, especially renters that come into the city. So that would be a good idea of putting something on the new utility applications when people sign up. In conclusion, this is where I am as far as the 3 departments are concerned that I've looked at so far. Moving forward, I'm going to be working with the police department, updating of their fees and fines, as well as other issues that come up within the department. And I've been working with Police Chief Ralston and his department quite a bit on this. The work has already begun. I'm also working with Teresa Galvin and Christy Alarcon in ECD, working with their fees and fines and other miscellaneous issues, especially updating the fees and fines schedule. And I think Christy has been very helpful so far with helping me with the updated fee schedule. And then, of course, there are other departments that I'll be helping out with the update of fees and fines and putting them in a central location, hopefully in an Excel spreadsheet. And that's really it.
Councilmember Costa?
Thank you, Marilyn. You're in the audience, so I'm going to ask you a question. Mr. McCune, is that okay? Sorry to call you up, and you weren't asked to be here this evening, I'm not sure. But I do have a question about some of the information that was presented in regards to the sidewalk repair costs. And I was curious, there is certain grant funding for sidewalks and for bike lanes. Is that correct?
Correct. We generally have, the recent sidewalk projects have been constructed using Safe Route to Schools funding, which is there's a state program and there's a federal program also.
And so what I was wondering, I know for some infrastructure projects, they require a match. Was this required to be spent for a match on some of those grant applications?
No, I believe the numbers that were quoted were out of the street maintenance repair costs. So as we get notices that, hey, my sidewalk is falling apart, can you come out and fix it? That's the number. That we add up all those, track those costs, and we add those up, and that's what we're talking about.
And so was it sort of a policy decision then that was the action that was taken? Somebody calls up and says, hey, my sidewalk is cracked, and then we would go out there and fix it. Is that an internal policy decision, or I guess I'm just trying to think about what's the thought process that led to that? Not that I think it's a bad thing necessarily, but just seeing as there is, I guess, what is it, the California Highway Code that says that it is the responsibility of the homeowner.
Correct. This has been a long-standing policy of the city to basically kind of assume that responsibility, and it's certainly a policy decision. It's a large number that we spend to take on that maintenance responsibility that isn't an actual requirement. It actually could be, if you chose to, given back to the homeowner per that reference in the government code.
And just to add to that, Councilmember Costa, I'd point out, number one, it's certainly not unique to Lompoc that it takes this view. However, consistently I find in those cities that have this practice where they recognize that the highway code puts the responsibility on the property owner for those repairs, and yet will intervene, if you will, to have that cost shifted from the individual property owner to the community as a whole. I think it's the most it's certainly the largest example I see of that sort of cost shifting going, or relief from the individual and burden then to the community, and it tends to happen with sidewalks. Yeah, so it's not unique to this community, but it certainly is. It stands far and away from any other activity I can think of at the city where we shift costs from the individual and make this policy call to do it across the community. And certainly in the last few years with the decline of the economy, there's a number of cities that are re-examining their policy in this regard.
Yeah, I guess, maybe that's a discussion to be had in the future. That's a double-edged sword, because with the declining economy, homeowners also have a limited potential to fix sidewalks. And so, are you willing to accept a lower standard and quality in neighborhoods because of that? And that's, I think, a discussion that has to be had. Well,
that's certainly one of the issues. Do you accept a lower quality, or do you maintain your quality and press the property owner to do the repairs they're compelled to do? And yeah, that's a policy call, because you get to be where you're having a much more heavy-handed approach to government. Basically tell them you repair it or we'll repair it and we'll lien your property. If you're going to maintain the standard, then that's the approach you end up taking.
Interesting. I'm not sure I would be really in favor of that at all. But thank you for answering the question. The other thing I wanted to mention was I'm curious to know if the flyer that went out came back with donations that exceeded the cost of $1,000, and I know you're looking into that.
Yeah, actually, the donations are actually coming in, and we are seeing some donations. I think the IT department is sort of trying to figure out how many of those are trickling in and how many of those are from those flyers. And I think I talked to Jessica Cadiente, who is the interim director, and she's sort of following up on that and helping me out with those numbers. So we are seeing some numbers coming in. We are seeing donations coming in. It is, we'll see what those numbers are going to be, but I do think that people will donate, given that it was sent out to so many people.
Yeah, right. So I'd be interested to know what the net is at the end of the day on that. And just to point out, I can't believe that went out to 14,000 people because the word please was spelled incorrectly. Darn it. So we got to be a little bit more careful with those things going out to all the residents, especially from the library. That's kind of mixed message. It's a little frustrating, but I appreciate you presenting the information to us. And I agree that I think that that's worth the investment, the sending that out. And even if you frame it that way, hey, even if we get 20% return at $5, this is what it can mean. Right. That compels me much more because I want to be part of a larger movement and work together with my community to achieve that. So I totally agree with that recommendation, and I appreciate you finding that. The only other question I had for you this evening was in regards to electronic utility payments. Is that something that you have been discussing? I know the city's been talking about doing it for a long time. I don't know the status or the cost savings or, associated with that.
Yes, that is something I would, that is something I've actually looked into. There's so much I've already found out that I couldn't put everything into one presentation. I just wanted to make this as quick as possible without overwhelming the city council. There's a lot of stuff coming up, and a lot of department heads have actually mentioned that it would be a good idea to have an electronic utility system. It would make it so much more helpful for people and the staff within the city. So it is absolutely something that has been, that has come to my attention.
City Administrator.
Yeah, we are, staff and particularly IT is addressing right now. Our challenges have been on some software compatibility issues and the like. And certainly as we're talking about resolving a number of about upgrading and modernizing our financial software, I think that'll help to support that quite a bit. So we're optimistic we can get caught up in that regard. We're definitely focused on bringing that and making that a reality.
Thank you.
Councilmember Humdahl.
Yeah, going back to the trees again. Some of the trees that are planted and out in that next to sidewalks were planted by the trees or by the city, or were told they had to be planted by the city when they did the development. And then you can't trim it because you got to get an okay from the city to trim the tree or take it down. So I think there's got to be some more study on how we handle the trees.
Excellent point. And just to give a small little case study from the prior city I worked for at the city of Fresno, its code actually made an exception. So it was in the code to say it was consistent with the state code that said sidewalk repairs are the responsibility of the property owner, with the exception of damage that's caused by a city tree. In that case, that was the city's responsibility. So they codified that exception or change. We do recognize in this city, like a lot of cities, if you went back 50 years ago and they started the forest, urban forest projects to bring some amount of bring trees back to the cities. We planted a lot of trees without much mind as to whether a particular tree was the appropriate variety or species to have that would be friendly to the surrounding sidewalk, that would be drought tolerant, that would be provide shade and have slow growth and non-invasive roots and the like. Overall, we've definitely learned how to do that better, and today we plant a better, a more compatible tree. The challenge becomes all those trees that were planted 50 years ago that weren't exactly right for the location are coming of the age when you always pay for those things 30, 40, and 50 years after they're planted, because that's when the biggest problems come around. So you're right, that has to be a part of a comprehensive view, and ultimately we have to have the right trees planted, not just trees planted. And ultimately also, my bias on that is once we have the right trees in place, there's no reason for the city to be the continued owner of those trees.
No, I think that's a good idea, because once you get in and get the old one out there and if you want to put a new one in, you can, or whatever. So the idea, because we've seen the street tree problem. The other question I have is when you talked about the hotels, now do you say you only got one hotel that signed the contract?
Correct. We've got,
Only had two within.
we had two, so one of them has already signed a contract,
Okay.
and there's a payment plan in place.
Okay, so they're going to go ahead and put that program together. So
We had two hotels, just to clarify, we had two hotels that are behind in their payments.
Right.
So we only had a need to resolve an issue with two of the hotels, the rest of them being current. So of the two, we've got a payment plan going with one, and we're still in, I guess the delicate way is to say we're still in negotiations with the other.
So the other ones, everybody else has signed up for the program.
The other ones we never had a problem with.
Yeah, right. Everybody else is paying as they're supposed to pay.
Yeah, people don't realize what happened this last weekend. It was Father's Day weekend, and we had between 200 to 500 people coming in to visit at the federal prison, and the hotels were full in town because I had people calling me wondering where we could find a hotel. So it's interesting. People don't realize how many people come in from the federal prison, but they'll run on a weekend 250 to 300 people a day coming in from all over the United States.
Councilmember Lingle?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Roth, first of all, thank you for your report. Look forward to future reports from you. Looks like making some progress here. I had also questions on sidewalks and trees, but I think we've exhausted that, other than to say if we can't get people to cut their lawns, I don't know how we're going to get them to replace their cracked sidewalks. Enough said on that. I do have a question on the libraries, though. The Santa Barbara County, or County of Santa Barbara, provides $252,000. Is that correct for?
Yes, that was the number given to me by Ashley Chavez.
Okay,
yes.
and let's assume that's right. Do you know if that is just the portion for the Lompoc Library, or is that all the portion for the Lompoc, the Buellton, and the Village Library?
I can find out. I don't want to say offhand that it is just for the Lompoc Library, but I believe it is for the Lompoc Library. I think Jessica might be able to answer that question a little bit better.
Okay.
She's here. So, is that it is just for Lompoc?
Just for Lompoc.
It's just for Lompoc.
Okay, so there'd be additional funds in for the Buellton and the Village, which are part of our budget for
Correct.
the library. Okay. Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Kevin, question for you. And this is the proverbial ballpark, but what percentage of the sidewalk damage would you think is caused by our street trees?
What percent of the 300 to 400 that was listed per year?
Yeah.
Oh, the vast majority of it would be caused by trees, for sure.
That's been my experience looking at what we're digging
Right.
up.
Right.
If there's an unrepaired sidewalk and there's a trip and fall, whose liability is it?
You're not going to get me to answer that in open session.
I just wanted to see you smile. And if we have a street tree that breaks up a sidewalk on a state highway, whose responsibility is it for us to repair it?
A street tree
along H and Ocean,
State
so it breaks the
highway.
sidewalk on the state highway.
Caltrans has tried to push that back on us. We've had some disagreements over that. So
And we fixed every one of them, haven't we?
The woes that have been fixed by us. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And then the last one, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but this council adopted a work plan in December of 2012 for you guys to come back to us with a plan to eliminate high-maintenance trees. And back then I said 4 years, and you said, what about 5? And when the Beautification Commission was here, they said, soon only, not yet.
Right.
Is it yet?
Yes. I've seen the third draft of that, and my next step is to show it to the boss here, and it will be coming to you by the end of the year, for sure.
You would be my hero, because I think we could eliminate a very substantial portion of that over the 5 years you want or the 4 years I want, which however we came to the end of that. Good fix on the River Park, and thanks to the city administrator for jumping in the middle of that and solving what seemed like a good decision at the time, but didn't work out to be very well, so we appreciate that. Any other questions? City administrator, anything else from you? Okay. Good. We'll move on to the next item. And now a word from the chief. More good news, right, Chief?
Oh, I always got good news. Just some news is a little better than others. I will attempt to make this brief. I'm very pleased to present to you our 2013 annual report, a whole new format from what you saw in 2007. The folks that have previewed this had a lot of good things to share with us, that it was easily readable. And what you're going to see in one of these slides are some of our accomplishments from 2013. And you'll see a bullet that says succession plan. When we implemented our succession plan in 2013, we made a commitment that when anybody goes to prepare themselves for promotion, they get a staff project. What you have in front of you is the results of one of those staff projects. That staff project was to develop a new streamlined format that we can be used from this year on and get this to you much quicker than June. Okay, see if I remember how to do this. So who are we? You already know who we are. We're your all-risk fire department. This number needs to be updated. It's about 43,000 counting the prison, squeezed into 11 square miles. We enjoy in and out mutual aid with the county and with Vandenberg Air Force Base. 2013 was a very special year for us. We developed a new mission, a new vision, and a new set of values. The new mission statement is there at the bottom. This is our new vision statement that was developed by the organization in concert with our labor unit and our chief officers. We're extremely proud of this vision statement. We believe that we live this, we breathe this, and every time somebody asks us what we are all about, we share this vision statement with them. These are also, the next one, our core values are articulated down the side of the annual report. And I'm not going to read these to you, but we came up with key core values first: teamwork, family, customer focus, respect, professionalism, and humility. We believe that those words really embody who we are and our values. So then we went about setting a sentence to each of them. Whoop, and that wasn't supposed to go that way. We're very proud that we treat our citizens like each other, with honor and decency. Every single week I get reports into my office about how over the top our crews have gone to help our citizens. Forget about the fire calls, forget about the traffic accidents. I mean, something as simple as helping somebody get back home when their bicycle is broken, or taking somebody's wheelchair to the hospital because the ambulance couldn't get it to fit in with the patient. Our call volume, you see it every week when I share my comments in the city administrator's report. Interesting dynamic here from 12 to 13 that I actually asked the guys to go back and double check. We plateaued for 2 years there. We plateaued. 2012 is exactly the call volume we had in 2013, and that's extremely rare. I'll tell you right now, we're on a pace to exceed 3,642 there. We've had several weeks of 80s and 90s. So I suspect our plateau is over. How were we able to handle these calls? It's as a result of the SAFER grant. It's as a result of the master plan. The SAFER grant allowed us to get to a level and beyond of staffing that we haven't seen in our department since 1986. So when you have adequate staffing, what goes hand in hand, particularly during a firefight, is property value saved. And yeah, we had a property loss of $676,205 last year, but the more important fact is we saved $25,950,970 by stopping the fire with good aggressive fire attack and an appropriate number of firefighters. Council approved in joint session with the Public Safety Commission our fire department master plan that helped us set the stage for the next several years. We had a very exciting project with the Cal Poly students. It was a Station 2 visioning project. That has now moved over into a needs assessment that's going on, a space needs assessment that's undergone right now. Our Firefighter Foundation secured $60,000. $60,000 was used to repurpose a vehicle and turn it into a quick response squad that went into service in January, which is why it's not on here. We had numerous CERT academies, numerous citizen first aid and CPR classes. We put in gear our succession plan, and we're starting to see positive results of that. And here's what the organization looks like following the SAFER grant. Our stations are staffed adequately. We've got 2 people every single shift on the rescue squad. And in 2014, we added the deputy fire marshal position. That's how we're able to provide the quality level of service that we do. So in 2013, what I didn't put up there because I was trying to keep my slides down to a minimum so you wouldn't get killed by PowerPoint, but we're very proud of the numbers in our community outreach section, and I'd like to call your attention. In spite of the fact that we are an extremely busy fire department, 2 stations in excess of 3,600 calls a year is busy for a community our size. But in spite of that, we did exhibitions and displays for 1,090 adults, 2,110 children. Those are mostly our open house and our Ready, Set, Go program. Fire safety demonstrations, these are typically requested. We touched 331 adults, 407 children. Our public education programs, that's our CERT, that's our CPR, 90 adults, 520 children. Ride-alongs. We have a ride-along program. It's one of the best kept secrets around. We did have 44 ride-alongs last year. Station tours, 104 adults, 586 children. We touched a total last year of 2013, 1,659 adults and 3,223 children with the message of safety and prevention. And for me, that's what it's all about. So 2014, I'm going to give you a little snapshot of what your 2014 is going to look like. You already know about the deputy fire marshal. That position is paying dividends. Our community interaction, our interaction with our businesses, our turnaround on phone calls, complaints, and inspections has become just phenomenal. The rescue squad went in service the end of January 2014. I review those runs off of that squad every single week. If it was not for that rescue squad, the last several weeks in particular, we would have had to have County Fire in here helping us a lot more than they ever had. The brush engine that you authorized, that we specified in 2013, you authorized in this current budget, is on the threshold of being placed in service in just a few weeks. In addition, in 2013, our Firefighters Foundation secured a $60,000 grant to place that rescue in service. In 2014, they finalized 12 months of fundraising to purchase for the department a community risk reduction trailer, commonly referred to as a fire safety trailer, but this is so much more. So, I'm big on pictures. Hard to believe that all that stuff goes in that little truck, but it does. That's the pump that's in there and all the stuff you see on the ground, $60,000 funded via a grant that our Fire Foundation secured. Kind of a two-edged sword. When we repurposed our utility into a fire rescue or quick response unit, we lost it as our tow vehicle. So we're struggling a little bit sometimes. That's the brush engine. It was here last week for some review and some testing. We sent it back to the factory. Not to the factory. We sent it to the service center. It was easier for them to do some of the things we wanted down there. But that is a state-of-the-art, short wheelbase, extremely maneuverable brush engine that everybody, when it pulled in, just went, wow, that turned out great. This is a specification that we took from Orange County and made our own with our specification committee. It should be back next week, and once we get the radio installed out at the shop, we've got about 2 to 3 weeks worth of training. As you can see, it's a little higher than our old one. So when we go to do the driver training, we're going to be spending a lot of time on hillsides and grades and stuff like that. But it also has better ground clearance than our old one. And that's the mock-up of the trailer. That's both sides. That's the front, the back. And the folks that really helped raise the money, obviously the Fire Foundation is the largest logo on the trailer. The next largest are partners from the Chumash tribe who donated in excess of $50,000 in matching funds. The Rotary donated $20,000, and you can't read them, but there's some other donors on the back, including Walmart and Home Helpers. So this has truly been a community effort, and right now we're on track for this to be in town and for us to have our training on it in time to preview it at the car show. And so we're very, very excited. I do have where we're at on the master plan stuff, but you guys have had 3 presentations now, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Any questions at this time? Looks like you're getting off light, Chief. Thank you very much.
Well, I'll stick around.
All right. All right. City Administrator's report.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple quick things. First, in the last couple weeks since last meeting, I had the privilege to attend Police Academy graduation with Chief Ralston, and immediately following that event, the chief swore in 3 new police officers, so we're thrilled to have the addition on our police force. And also the other item, speaking of the police chief, just reminding you, he has submitted for his retirement, and we're processing him accordingly. And in part and parcel with that, as you're aware, we are conducting a recruitment for the next police chief. That is underway. It's still open. It'll close next week, and with then an evaluation process that includes, we're expecting interview panels in mid-July, and ultimately trying to get to a point where as soon after that we can make a selection, and hopefully by earlier mid-fall have a new chief in place. But with all of that in place, appreciate very much the guidance that Chief Ralston has provided in his cooperation to make this transition as smooth as possible, and I just very much appreciate his service that's been to the city, and it's going to be a couple big shoes to fill there. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Oral communications, this is your opportunity to speak to us for 5 minutes on any subject. If you...
we also wanted to include a little update on the 4th and 5th of July.
Thank you for reminding me. I totally dropped the big important news. Thanks. Joanne, if you would come up and share. I had asked if Joanne could give some updates just on people and doing their planning for the 4th of July holiday. So,
thank you. I thought I was going to be able to escape out of here. But good evening. We just wanted to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about the fireworks show this year and some of the different ways families can celebrate the 4th of July. As indicated in the staff report by Chief Latipow at the December 3rd council meeting, there's a variety of options for our community members to celebrate Independence Day this year. There are 3 distinct block party permit options allowing for the discharge of safe and sane fireworks. The first option is the block party permits in city streets, which allows city residents the opportunity to apply for a block party permit, which would close a street within a neighborhood to allow for safe discharge of legal fireworks in streets, public rights-of-way, and privately owned parking lots. The process will include an application, written permission from 75% of the residents affected by the street closure, a diagram of the layout, and other details related to the event. If the application is for a privately owned parking lot, written permission by the property owner will be required. In the case that the regulations outlined in the permit are not followed, the event will be shut down by the Lompoc Police and/or fire departments, and no alcohol will be permitted in the city streets. The second option is the block party permits for city parks. This is an opportunity for city residents, businesses, and organizations to apply for a block party permit to ignite safe and sane fireworks at one of 3 city parks in the designated areas. The application will include a lead applicant, a permit fee, as well as a cleaning security deposit, and again, no alcohol permits will be granted for these events. The third option is a city-sponsored block party. This option invites city residents to discharge their safe and sane fireworks at the Old Town parking lot as an approved site that will have oversight provided by the city. There will be no alcohol permitted there, and there will be no charge for individuals to utilize this location. The permit process for citizens to host a 4th of July block party inside the city limits is administered through the Lompoc Recreation Division, and details on all these options are currently on our homepage, the city website. The community fireworks show at Houck Stadium will be held this year on Saturday, July 5th. The ticket price remains the same as last year, with pre-sale pricing at $2 for individuals 12 and under and $4 for those 13 and over through July 3rd. On July 5th, tickets will be on sale at the high school beginning at noon and will be $3 more. Once you're inside the gate, all the activities for the children are free, to include the bounce houses, the inflatable slide, the PAL climbing wall, face painting, entertainment, and more. The gates will open at 5 p.m. and we'll be closing the gates before the fireworks go off at 8:45. The Lompoc Employee Development Association will be on hand to provide snack bars. The fire department will be there with cotton candy, and families are welcome to bring their own food inside a soft cooler. Because we are inside the high school stadium, no alcohol, glass containers, or pets or smoking are permitted inside the stadium. Tickets are currently available at the Anderson Recreation Center during regular business hours this week and next. Extended hours until 7 p.m. We'll have ticket sales going on again at the Anderson Recreation Center the week following Flower Festival. So I'm available if you have any questions regarding the different block parties and the fireworks show on the 5th.
Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Marilyn. I just noticed that we have a representative from the Lompoc Record here this evening, so it would be great if we could get a summary of that somehow published in the local paper, because I noticed the 4th of July block party packets is online, but then the event information is separate. Where can I find the 5th of the fireworks show information? We still have some other information that needs to be posted this week. It'll all be online on our homepage.
Perfect.
There is information available in our recreation guide, which is also on the homepage. If you click on there in the events section, the fireworks show is in there.
And we are doing a media release with the same information, but we want to take the opportunity to highlight it here for people that are planning ahead for their block parties.
Really good. Councilmember Starbuck.
Why are we doing the 4th of July on the 5th?
We're doing
is it like Cinco de July? I'm lost in the whole holiday here.
We're doing a fireworks show on the 5th. It's not a 4th of July fireworks show. It is a fireworks show. Traditionally, we have held it on the 4th because our community members didn't have an alternative option because safe and sane fireworks were illegal. There were numerous reasons why this decision was made, and the end result is we are hoping that we will see a greater attendance by shifting the day because we lost attendance last year. We're hoping that this will allow the event to have the support from our public safety that we were not able to have last year due to the situation with the safe and sane. And we're hoping to have just a grand finale to the celebrations. We have people doing the block party options and other activities at home on the 4th, and being able to extend your activities and celebration to the 5th, and we'll see if it works. If it doesn't work out this year, it's a pilot project. We can always look at shifting it back to the 4th, but it was a decision that was made in hopes. We only have 47,000 people, I believe the chief stated, in our community, and we're competing for those same people. So rather than competing, we're trying to host a weekend of activities and opportunities for our citizens.
Thank you, Joanne. Okay, now we'll try again. Anybody else? Chief? No? Got it. All right. So this is oral communications. It's your opportunity to speak to us for 5 minutes on any subject. If you're here for an item on the agenda, we're going to get there pretty quick because almost everything tonight is consent. So if you can't wait, come on down. If not, going once, going twice. No oral communications. Okay. This evening we have a very long consent calendar, and this will be kind of a thing of the future. We're going to try to move some things from that are more mundane in nature from being agenda items to the consent, with the hope that it'll shorten up our meetings a little. So we have approval of the minutes, item number 1. Item 2, the approval of expenditures, a payroll voucher for 1.3, a voucher register for $689,000, a voucher register for $589,000. I will not participate in check number 320198 for $1,232.50 to Smitty's Towing. Item number 3, the smoking prohibition in recreational areas, adoption of ordinance number 1604-14. Item number 4, approval of the amendment number 1 of the Third Amendment and the restricted NCPA aggregator agreement. Item number 5, amendment to the City Council Handbook, adopting Resolution 5931, changes this council previously requested. Item number 6, adoption of the Santa Barbara Integrated Regional Water Management Plan for 2013. This is the short version. The long version fills 2 notebooks. Item number 7, approval of the annual operations and maintenance plan for the city, which allows us to avoid certain CEQA expenses. Item number 8, amendment to the city's compensation plan to implement changes regarding the Chief of Police and the Economic Development Director, Assistant City Administrator job classes. Item number 9, the state mandated minimum wage increases and the adoption of Resolution 5930-14. Item number 10, the Wine Country Express and Breeze Bus Memorandums of Understanding. Those are joint ventures with the City of Santa Maria, the County of Santa Barbara, and the Cities of Solvang and Buellton. Item number 11, notice of the general municipal election for November 4th, 2014, and requesting the Board of Supervisors to consolidate the election. Adoption of the City Council policy regarding deposits for candidate statements. And this is a process by which the county consolidates our election with theirs, and we save money. We both save money. Item number 12, Internet service fees and service offering changes, adoption of Resolution 5932-14. And I would say briefly that the Lompoc net system, which we have operated as a Wi-Fi system, has 2 new upgraded services that are absolutely amazing. I have one of them in my shop, and if you're looking for something that's better than what you have, it sure beat my old DSL. And then item 13, approval of the Summit View reorganization? Yes. Extension agreement. Yeah, okay. So this is the annexation agreement for the 10-acre parcel up at the Y, and this is being extended because the county is going through an arbitration process with us. Is there an item on this list that a council member would like to pull? Councilmember Lingle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to pull item number 3, and I'd also like to just make a brief comment on item number 9. I do not want to pull it, though.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, my comment on item number 9, which, as the mayor stated, is state mandated minimum wage. It'll be increasing in 2 different stages to $8 or $9 an hour and then $10 an hour. Now, please don't read into this. Anyone making currently $8 an hour, I can't even imagine how difficult it would be for someone to raise a family. With this, our staff reports, it sort of says there's no financial impact to the city. Well, there is a financial impact because the cost that it's going to be for us when we look at ourselves as a business has to come from someplace, and it's going to come from reduced services someplace, which is going to be the same thing for any other business in our community when they raise the minimum wage to $9 and $10. Those costs have to come from someplace. So there are costs associated, and like I said, don't read into this that I'm not in favor of it or against it. I can't even imagine, like I said, raising a family or even supporting one person on $8 an hour. But there are costs associated with this, and our state is mandating this for us. That's my comment, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, and I would add to that that the bulk of the people who are affected by this in the city are recreation aides, so that's primarily students. I don't know which one of you is next. Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Mary Lynn. I would like to pull item number 12 from the consent calendar. I understand if staff isn't present to discuss this evening, that's fine. We can always move it to another meeting, but if staff's present, tonight's fine as well.
Councilmember Starbuck.
Yeah, I don't want to pull item 6, but I did have some questions concerning it, and this is the Santa Barbara Integrated Regional Water Management Plan. I understand that our water utility pays for our membership in this. And what I'm curious about is how much we pay and what we receive and what our value is in it. It says that we've received $28 million to date in state grant funding, but we've received it. What have we received as a city on this? I guess the question is, are we getting bang for our buck, and are we required to be in it? I mean, we're paying to seed clouds, and we're paying for this. I'm wondering what else is coming out of the water utility that we just raised 20-some%.
Thank you, Member Starbuck. We do get some benefits out of that. We can gather the data for the specifics of what our direct benefit has been and in giving that to you, but I'll have to gather that information and bring it back to you.
Okay. Any other comments on the consent calendar? If not, I'd accept a motion to approve the consent calendar excluding items 3 and 12.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, seeing no lights, could we vote, please? That passes 5-0. Thank you. And before we go to our first business item, we will take the proverbial 5-minute break. Watch the clock.
One on the screen.
Okay, item number 14, new business. Lompoc Valley Park Recreation and Pool Foundation. No, they go to the end. Foundation Subcommittee, Fallen Warriors Memorial, proposed to enter into a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, with the city for the development of a memorial at Beatty Park. Kevin?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members, and the public. My name is Kevin McCune. I'm the Public Works Director. And briefly, because the group actually has a presentation they want to make with you, but very briefly, the item before you is a permanent memorial surrounding the flagpole at Beatty Park. The project was reviewed by the Parks and Rec Commission in 2012 with unanimous support, and also reviewed by the City Council in February of last year. And at that point, you had directed us to go and meet with the committee, develop an MOU to spell out responsibilities on each part, and move forward with the project. And that's what we've done. Tonight you have an MOU in front of you that will outline the responsibilities for moving forward with the construction of the memorial. The highlights of the MOU are the memorial will be designed by a licensed professional, including an architect. It will be built by licensed contractors with oversight over volunteers. The MOU calls for appropriate indemnification and insurance requirements. And also, which is a little different than other ones, it calls for long-term maintenance of the memorial after it's built. So this will be something that we can all be proud of for years to come in the future. And there's a small fiscal impact. The group has asked for the city permit fees to be waived, and we're asking you to appropriate $2,500 to cover those permit fees costs. So before I turn it over to the group, I wanted to thank Bob and Lori and everybody that I worked with over the last couple of years. It's just been a pleasure to work with you guys, and the most organized and professional volunteer group I've ever worked with. So with that, I'll bring Bob up and let you make your presentation. And just a reminder, if once after they're done and the council approves it, I believe City Clerk has arranged for a signing ceremony afterwards.
Good evening, Bob.
Good evening. We're trying to catch up with technology here. I'm used to flashcards, and so I'm trying to get with modern way of doing business. And no, I don't want to use the City Hall Wi-Fi. Oh, yes, we're finally there. Good evening. My name is Bob Schramm, and it's a great pleasure to meet with you tonight for the signing of our Memorandum of Understanding with the City of Lompoc and to move forward with the construction of the Fallen Warriors Memorial. The Fallen Warriors Memorial Committee members have been working hard to reach this point. Our engineering is almost complete. We are about 98% now. We are working on our construction plan, and our fundraising efforts have been successful. All of our communication with citizens of Lompoc during our various fundraising events, which I'll discuss later, indicate the citizens of Lompoc are in favor of this memorial. Could you put it on? That's our logo. At this time, I'd like to share with you a little bit about our design, our budget, and a little bit about the fundraising efforts that we have to date to gather the resources needed to build a memorial. This is the flag-raising ceremony at Beatty Park, which we conducted on November of 2011. The Fallen Warriors Committee was formed shortly after this dedication ceremony. At this time, I'd like to introduce our committee members that have worked so hard to get us to this point. And Lori Lane is my vice chairman. Roger McConnell is not here. Debbie McComb is going to be our general contractor. Michelle Majors, I don't believe Michelle is here. Michael Peachy is not here, but he was the architect that contributed so much to the design documentation, which is so critical to doing a project like this right. Yvonne Cooper, who is here, and we also have Elizabeth Lewis, who is here also. And I'd like to thank these people for some very professional work. The memorial will honor all warriors that have fallen in the line of duty, not just a particular period or conflict. This is an overview of this is a plan view of the memorial. It's not an artist's concept or a painting. This was generated from the engineering, which to people who are working in that endeavor realize this is about as close as you'll get to seeing what it'll really look like. A little bit about it. This is going to be a donor circle. As you enter the memorial, this would be coming from the east into the memorial. And we'll have major donors, logos, and whatever they want in this area here. These little strips here will have names in them of donors who want to have their name recorded with the memorial. They can pay a certain amount, and we'll get a plaque there for them. As you come into the memorial, on this side, along about here, and on this side, along about here, there will be two wings that will have the nameplates of veterans. They can buy a nameplate and have their name on the memorial. Inside the memorial are 5 pedestals, and the 5 pedestals will have the names on them for the fallen warriors that have died since World War I. And for your information, there's 48. We're now working on number 49. I've just recently completed a little investigation to vet that particular name, and we'll be voting on that in the committee, but we're probably going to be at about 49. 2 are from World War II, 2 from World War I, 19 from World War II, 1 from Korea, 15 from Vietnam, 2 from Iraq, 2 from Afghanistan, and 7 from other different conflicts around the world. And we're trying very hard to verify and identify any other names that should be memorialized. I'd like to point out that since the last presentation to the city, we've added 10 names. So we have been working hard, and the press has helped us a lot with that. We get, right after an article comes out, we get people saying, what about my son-in-law or my brother or my whatever? And that's resulted in 10 names being added. And the courtyard is going to be made of California gold slate. And the bench here, which is going to be facing, we're looking out towards Lompoc this way, overlooking Lompoc, will be made of black absolute granite, which has been leathered to give it a little texture. And the vertical surfaces in the area will be Lompoc stone. We've kind of made a design change, and we're going to use black absolute granite to face the vertices on these pedestals with the black absolute granite, so it'll really stand out. It'll really look nice. So that's a little bit about what the memorial is going to look like. I'd like to talk a little bit about our budget. This is a very conservative cost estimate. Since our last presentation, we've had to revise the budget upwards of about 9%. The red numbers are those areas that have been revised upwards, and this has occurred primarily because of increases we anticipate, because we're not going to be as reliant on volunteer labor, and that's kind of an insurance-driven decision. We can come in under that. I expect we will. That's very conservative, but that's our preliminary budget as we speak. This is our action plan. We're going to sign the MOU tonight and begin finalizing the drawings. There's some last-minute things we might want to be doing to them. We've also got some construction plans we're going to be working on. We're going to obtain final bids from volunteer commitments. Those people who are licensed contractors may wish to provide in-kind labor and in-kind donations. So we're trying to understand what we might be able to do there. We've had 4 fundraising programs. I'll talk about them a little bit later, but during those fundraising programs, we've raised $24,445. We're going to, based on our the improvements to our design, we'll be getting our permits and approvals, and we'll go into our construction. At one time, we had an idea about trying to phase it in, but the more I think about that, the less I like it, because if you got half a project, it isn't there, and it doesn't do any, it just doesn't give us what we are there to build. So we're not going to begin construction and have something that's half done out there until we got the money to finish it. So I'm feeling less and less like we're going to phase this in. I think we're going to wait until we can afford to do it, and then we're going to do it right. We're going to be landscaping the memorial, and then we'll have a dedication ceremony, and then we'll enter into our maintenance program. So that's kind of the path forward. This is our fundraising program. We've had 2 street barbecues, And the street barbecues were a very beneficial program. In addition to the money we raised, we were able to interact with citizens of Lompoc about the desirability of having a memorial like this. And the people, without exception, all said, wow, this is a great thing to do. So we got a lot of really positive input from the citizens of Lompoc about the memorial project. And I really appreciated their candid comments. I kind of got my batteries charged a little bit because they were so enthused about it. We had a fun day in the park, which was less about raising money and more about getting the people of Lompoc together to have a good time. And oh, by the way, become familiar with what our project is and have a nice day in the park. And so I got some pictures about that. We had a red, white, and blue dinner dance that Mayor John Lynn was at, and I think, Dwayne, I think you were there, and I don't know who else was there. Yeah? So, yeah. So we had a really good time there. We made over $20,000 that night. Over $20,000. It was amazing. $1,000 for a flight over Lompoc. Whew. Anyway, the last thing I'd like to talk about is grants. We have 2 grants in work right now. I'm not going to go into detail on those grants, but we're very hopeful that we'll be able to gather the money that we need to help us build that through the grants. There's a fun day in the park, just kind of some pictures. I'll breeze through these pretty quick, but you get an idea of what we were doing there. The Boy Scouts were shooting at cans with rubber bands, and we had music. We had stuff going on, fingernail painting and dinosaur dig, and you just can't imagine it. Lori had a really full program going, and I was amazed at how much was going on. Our barbecues, the Elks did the barbecuing, and we were able to interact with the citizens a lot on those days, and we made about $2,000 a day with those. This is from the dinner dance. As you can see, we had a lot of people there, and they were having a good time. We had a band, and they played, the Riptide dance band played some really good music. They have, this band evolved from the Glenn Miller Band, and as a matter of fact, some of their music was from the Glenn Miller music collection. And this was the table to honor the KIA, the MIA, from our servicemen. At this time, I'd like to say thank you to the citizens of Lompoc, without whose contributions this won't be possible. I'd like to also thank Kevin McCune for his support in making this happen. Thank you, Kevin. You helped us get through this process, and it was less onerous than I expected. So thank you very much. And I'd also like to thank the city council members. I've talked to you all at various times, and you've given me really good counsel, and I appreciate that. The Parks and Recreation and Pool Foundation has helped us immeasurably with their advice on how you move forward a project like this. And last but not least, I'd like to thank the Fallen Warriors Memorial Committee, who have just been an absolutely professional group. And I don't think I have ever worked with a group of people as committed and dedicated and professional as those people. So thank you, Fallen Warriors Memorial Committee. That's the end of my presentation. I have one last thing.
And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. But I won't forget the men who died, who gave that 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
You're pretty high-tech. I just want to lead off by thanking you guys for all the work. I think you know that we've had a couple tries in the past at putting something together that didn't work out, and I'm just absolutely ecstatic at where you guys are at with this. So, and it is absolutely beautiful, particularly thanks to Michael Peachy, who just has his heart and soul into this. Councilmember Lingle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just also want to thank you. It's if the end result is anything as professional as you, your group, and this presentation was, you're going to make, I know it's going to be professional. The city is going to be very proud of this. It's going to be something that we can send visitors to. Yes, we've got this event, or this memorial up there. It's just, as we know, it's very unfortunate we have to have a wall at all for people that have died. I mean, in other words, I wish people hadn't died. And I hope we don't have to add any names, any future names to it. But thank you again very much.
Any other questions? Okay.
Well, there's
Thanks,
just
Bob.
one more thing.
Sure.
I am, and I haven't told the committee this, but I've been working with some people on the possibility of getting Lompoc on the Purple Heart Trail. And after we get the memorial built, that'll be my next project, is to get a sign out there pointing to Lompoc as having being on the Purple Heart Trail.
Fantastic.
Marilyn, I do have one question. My apologies.
Surely.
So it looks like you're about, for your funding and what you fundraised so far, you need about $200,000 more dollars. Is that what you're looking at?
Yeah, that's a conservative estimate, Ashley.
Okay. So community, now you know there's a need for funding for a fantastic project. So I support you 100%. Lovely design. Great aspect with the wind. I think it's going to be nice to sit in there because there's going to be a nice wind block on both sides. So it should be a really nice atmosphere for anyone who's visiting. So I'm really looking forward to this project, and please let us know if there's any other ways we can help.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Now I'd like to open this up for public comment. Who would like to talk to us about this item? Lori, if you don't come and say something, come on. No? All right. Last chance. Going once. Well, you're the heart and soul that started this going down the road, so I just want the people at home to see your face.
Well, Mr. Mayor and City Council people, thank you very much. My name is Lori Lane, and I am the heart and the passion behind the project. My son Mitchell died in 2003. He was a Green Beret going in on a night mission over the caves of Pakistan border to go get bin Laden, and that was his goal, was to get him. And a gust of wind pulled the helicopter and pulled the rope out of his hand. He was fast propelling down from the helicopter, the Chinook that had 24 very qualified Green Beret that were protecting our country and keeping our freedom. And there have been a couple of projects in the last 10 years to try to do something for the community. And when Beatty Park didn't have a flagpole, I felt we need a flagpole. And so Conception Tile really came behind us and helped us with that. And there's a beautiful box that has the military seals of the 6 branches of the military, the Army and the Navy and the Coast Guard and the Air Force and the Marines, and it's beautiful. We'll have that somewhere up there. But I want to say thank you to Lompoc and the support that the community has shown. This will be a beautiful project. We'll be very proud of it, and we will maintain it. Promise, it will be maintained. We'll have cherry trees so that it will look like the cherry blossoms in Washington, D.C. And we are just thrilled to be here tonight to sign this agreement. So thank you. Thank you, Council, and thank you, John Lynn.
Anyone else from the public want to speak? So we'll close public comment and bring it back to the council. And any further discussion?
Now, I'd be very honored to go ahead and move staff recommendations.
I'll second.
All right. Is there any further discussion? Seeing no lights, could we vote, please? And that passes 5-0. Thank you, everyone. And now, Chief.
Mr. Mosby? Mr. Mosby, we need you up here. Mr. Shaw? Joe.
Tell Laura she just said him a flower shirt.
Hey, you guys, not so fast. We've got to get everybody up here. Come on, Jim.
Recording everything they say.
You know it's official of the city because we get 10 signatures.
Everybody with 10. Probably going to go back. Oh, I need the phone. We can see that in the picture.
Hereby proposed. Thank you all so very much. And for those of you at home, don't hesitate, donate.
Yeah, I've heard that someplace before.
That's it. Okay, and now we will move to item number 15, something a lot less fun, a public hearing of objections to destroy weeds, remove rubbish, refuse, and dirt. Pretty exciting stuff.
The honor. Mr. Mayor, members of council, this is part 2 of our annual abatement program. And this year's been a little bit challenging. We're still working with some of the homeowners. But as we have in the past, we're requesting that you hold the public hearing to receive comments and information from the public to show cause why nuisance conditions upon subject property should not be abated, and that you adopt Resolution 593514, ordering me to go ahead and abate the nuisances, and we have contractors standing at the ready.
And how many unabated nuisances do you have at last count?
Well, Dina was out inspecting until 6 o'clock tonight, and it appears that we've got about 15. Plus, we picked up a few more.
Wow, that's pretty high compared to normal, huh?
Well, we started with about 125.
Yeah, we're usually down to like 8 or 10.
We usually are. Some challenges this year. Apparently, some property has sold. The owners had not been updated within the county's system, and we had to chase down some new property owners. Some of the HOAs had changed their property management companies and their landscapers, and so all these red notes on here are Dina's notes as to progress, and some of them are done, some of them are not quite there. Some of them will start abating tomorrow, and others, if they're not done within a week, we'll bring the landscaper in to abate them.
Okay. Any questions? Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Mary Lynn. Can you just report back, or even, however you want to do that, with how many ended up being abated by the city?
I can do that.
Thank you. Just a quick number at one of the meetings would be helpful.
Now, once we start this process, it opens the door that if there's regrowth, we come in and abate again without any further action. So some of these will be repeated throughout the year.
Councilmember Lingle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's great to hear. That was actually one of my questions because, as you know, there's several pieces that they had cut once a year, and that's when we go in and do it. So I'm glad to hear we're going to be continuing. There is one property that is not on this list. It's pretty conspicuous. It's in the 1400 block of East Ocean. It's the large commercial vacant lot that's not on the list, and it's pretty overgrown. It's the, I believe it's the Kargasaki property.
It's not on the list because it was mowed before we even put the list together, and currently we have regrowth of mustard, which is typical. This is one of the reasons why I hesitate to come in too soon. What happened is we sent the letters out and reminding people it was that time of the year. They mowed right away. We got a late rain. So the property owner's been contacted. It should be mowed within the next day or two.
Okay, I hope so. With the Flower Festival coming in, that being at the entrance to our city, I'd really like to see that taken care of.
Yeah, the challenge is when the mustard is green and yellow, I'm really not able to declare it a fire hazard. So we work with those property owners to try and get them cleared.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Holmdahl.
Yeah, I'm glad to see the recommendation. I did do a tour of town, and some of them that you had on there have been done, but a lot of them have to be done. But there is a lot of green going up, so you do have that problem. But the water ditch containers or holders up there going up to the city dump, as you come off that road, they're a mess. And some of that grass is 3 feet tall on the west side of the road going up. That's where those water is caught coming out of there. So. And I know you've seen them, we all see it. And they're doing a good job of it, and some do, others, and some don't. But it needs to be done. People just got to realize that we talk about fire hazard all the time, and that's some major ones.
And I would like to compliment Kevin's crews. They've been working nonstop. As you know, the city actually has a fair amount of property as well. And we talk early on so that we make sure that we're the example and not the exception. It's just there's a lot to do.
Okay, now I'm going to open this public hearing, the public hearing for public comment. Is there anyone here that would like to talk to us on this item? Going once? Going twice? None. Okay. Back to council. Are there any further questions on this? And if not, I'd accept a motion.
I'll move we go ahead and take the fire chief's recommendation.
And a second.
I'll second.
And any other discussion? Seeing no lights, could we vote, please? That passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you guys can hang out if you want, but we're going to go to some pretty exciting stuff next. So the first item pulled was item number 3, and we'll go back to that. You're welcome. Good night. Now, let's see. So we'll start off with the staff presentation from the city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is a second reading of the ordinance regarding prohibiting smoking in recreation areas. We presented to you the ordinance with changes based on your comments from last meeting, which is at the bottom of page 6 and the top of page 7 of one of the ordinances, just so that you see the changes. And the changes basically allows the city administrator to have exceptions in certain areas of some of the recreation areas to allow smoking. And with that, if you have any questions, I'll answer them, or the city administrator will. And if you have no questions, then we'd recommend that you approve this for the second reading, waiving the reading of the entire ordinance.
Ozar of smoking, do you have any comments at this time?
No, I'm just waiting to hear what the questions are being raised, but I think the staff report was self-explanatory. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lingle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I asked to have this item pulled because at our last meeting, this was, I believe, the last item on the agenda. It was almost 1:30 in the morning, and in retrospect, I mean, the mayor did make some comments that evening, and in retrospect, we should have spent more time on it, but at 1:30 in the morning, I felt it was actually irresponsible for a city council to be discussing and making a commitment for an item that's going to be an obligation for the city residents and visitors for years to come. So two things I want to get across is, number one, when we're making decisions and we're awake for over 18 hours, we just can't have this anymore. We can discuss this at a later date, but we just can't be discussing items that are going to be impacting our citizens that late for a number of reasons. But getting back to the actual item, Mr. Mayor, one of the things you pointed out was the RV park. Are we going, currently, the way this ordinance is written, someone's going to come in, rent some space in our RV park, and they would not be allowed to smoke in their parking area where they park their trailer or their RV. If a family wants to rent a barbecue area and have a family barbecue, they will not be able to smoke in there. I talked to the mayor earlier today, and he used an example of renting a barbecue area in River Park, and if they want to have a cigarette, they'd have to drive 5 minutes out to 246, have a cigarette, come back. Okay, so, but I have spoke with the city administrator, and I'm going to kind of put you on the spot, or maybe Teresa. I believe these issues are being resolved through possibly an amendment to the contracts that people will sign for the rented areas. And Mr. City Administrator, would you discuss that?
Sure. In our consultation and discussion among staff, we'd recognized two areas specifically, and that as you've identified them, both campgrounds areas and then gazebo areas, or areas where people are inclined to rent specific areas. So our strategy was indeed to initially to designate those areas as smoking being permitted, and as you alluded, with the help of the city attorney, we were going to be seeking to address that specifically within rental agreements, so that it was clearly defined there. It would be, it would serve as the constructive notice and both extend and limit the smoking allowance in those areas. So staff had already brought that up as a strategy we needed to address, just because of the practicality of it. Beyond that, if we're talking about other areas, then we'll be, we're not going to be, my personal approach is not to go out and see how many places I can find to designate smoking, other than as particular occasions arise or situations arise, or I become informed of locations that may have that need. If those are brought to my attention, then we'll consider those on a case-by-case basis. But the two areas you cited are ones that our strategy is to create this permissibility.
Yeah, and I'm happy with that. I'm hoping the rest of the council is. Another area that came up, one of the speakers at the last meeting discussed that he can't go to, I believe it was San Luis Obispo anymore, because it was illegal to smoke any place in the city. He couldn't even walk down a sidewalk. I conferred with our city attorney, and even though sidewalks in the city of Lompoc are public property, they are not included in this agreement. So a person will not be cited for walking down the sidewalk smoking a cigarette. It is only in recreational areas. So, those two items those two areas were things that I was concerned about, and I think those are to my satisfaction right now.
Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Mayor Lynn. Councilmember Lingle, I think you bring up a really good point. And I don't know if you recall, but there's been times when I've voted against extending the meeting, and you're exactly right. I think that at that point, we've begun that point of diminishing return where our brains aren't functioning at the same capacity that they are at 7 o'clock or even 9 or 10 or 11 o'clock. So I think that speaks to the culture of the council and something that we need to be cognizant of and really figure out what the solution is, some of which is incumbent upon us as council members and the city administrator working together to figure out some solutions to that. The question I had about the ordinance itself was actually the signage. Were we not going to add any language regarding signage of a pictorial representation of not just a burning cigarette, but other types of cigarettes, because we've said that those are now prohibited as well in these recreational areas?
It's certainly something that can be added to the signage. It doesn't need to be in the ordinance to add it, but it is something that could be added.
I think our focus has been on the signage where it would be allowable, because the default was going to be that it's not allowed. So it sounds like you're saying, in addition to the fact that the ordinance is not allowing it, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're interested in some signage that would reinforce the prohibition.
Well, I think part of the challenge is not just the prohibition on tobacco, cigarettes, what we talk about, the term smoke includes but is not limited to tobacco smoke, electronic cigarette vapors, or marijuana smoke. So how does the public know that it includes electronic cigarette vapors or marijuana smoke if it's not clearly indicated somewhere? That's a community education piece. I'm sure the police department is going to have a really fun time enforcing that. But I didn't know if we felt it was necessary to somehow include some signage, especially if we haven't purchased it yet. Maybe it would be at the same cost to have them a signage that has, a clearer designation of what is not allowed in that area. So it was just a discussion that we had. I think that if it's not included, it'll fall by the wayside and we probably won't end up doing it. Is it the end of the world? No, but I just figured, I think Mr. Holmdahl was the one who brought it up in the first place, and I don't think it's a bad idea. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Whatever signage we put up needs to describe all the things that you can't do. One of the things that, I'm still not very comfortable with this, because I'm a less is better in the regulation side kind of guy. So, and I was trying to put it in perspective. So basically, nationally, 20% of the people smoke. So we're going to tell 20% of the Lompoc residents that they can't use the park conveniently. About 30% of the people consume alcohol and drive with blood alcohol levels somewhere between 0.03 and 0.07, but we're not telling them they can't drive, and both are relatively hazardous things to do. And as the city administrator and I were chatting, the mayor is about 25 or 30 pounds overweight, which I think makes me obese. But we haven't told me I can't have a hamburger. And surely that's yeah, you can try, there you go. And that's surely a cost to the country. So I guess my question is still why, I understand fully about limiting it where youth recreation goes on, I'm all good with that. but I'm not sure why we want to chase everybody out of the park. One of the other things that occurred to me as we were sitting here talking is the dog show has a large parking area that encompasses almost all of the fields during the dog show, and that would kind of be along the same lines as the RV parking in our RV park. Additionally, at the Flower Festival, a large portion of the park is used by one of the nonprofits for parking, and are people going to be able to ride in their car smoking, or do we have to have a no smoking sign where they pay their money to come into the park? Just a quick look at all of the park spaces that we have. Assuming we put a sign every 150 feet around all of the various park spaces, bike paths, and so on, my rough guess was we would need about 120 signs. Yeah, and we don't have a discussion of the financial impact or where that's going to be paid for. Obviously, the largest number of those signs relate to bike paths. And I really question why we need to have a no smoking ordinance on a bike path, because it is parkland. And I would think from a cost saving standpoint, we should be able to eliminate those.
Marilyn, I'm in agreement that the signage for the bike path could probably be tailored specifically to the bike path, whereas maybe one at each of the main entrance points, but you wouldn't need them along the path every 100 feet or anything, you know what I mean?
The problem is people walk in all over the place, so if they walk in and, they're not from around here, because the bike path is probably one of the things that's used more heavily by non-locals. And you're liable to have, I don't even know why we're restricting smoking on a bike path, but whatever. We're in Lompoc where the wind blows. And there's also a new requirement in here of posting signs at businesses that's different from what we've currently had, which means, as I read this, businesses are all going to have, that our public service businesses are all going to have to post a new sign. I don't know if that's our intent or not, but I think that's where it's going.
To answer that question, that's actually already in the state law, so some of what's in here is just a repeat of what's already in the state law, so that requirement already exists.
Okay. Well, we have a great number of buildings that don't have signs on them, and we're now going to be asking people to put those signs up. So I don't know if we want to include this and create another thing for us, or we just want to let the state law do it. I would call all of your attention to page 5 of 8 in the second to the last paragraph, where it describes all of the places that this is going to apply to. I would submit to you that making it more complicated for groups to have events in our parks, for instance, when I was at the Vintners Festival and it was in the park, there were a lot of people smoking cigars. I've been at the dog show and there have been people off to the side. I've been at the Flower Festival and they're either out behind the booths or they're out walking around. The same with Spring Arts. I see a lot of people out on the walking path happily enjoying their cigarette, going along with no one around them. And I'm really not quite sure how the motorsports park is going to deal with it, because that's a little more of a smoking and beer drinking crowd. So, we're going to be creating an awful lot of opportunities for them too. I would really, really like you guys to think about narrowing this up a little bit. If you're in love with having it for all of parks, rather than just areas where youth programs go on, I guess I can understand that. But some of these other things really don't need to be in here. That's my thought. Councilmember Lingle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, you and I, we've discussed it, and we talked about how we will enforce this. Like out in the bike park, how we can enforce this. As Chief Ralston stated last meeting, 30 years of law enforcement, he's never written a citation for smoking, even though there's been smoking areas or non-smoking areas throughout the state of California for many years. It also stated we shouldn't make an ordinance that we don't intend on enforcing, and I agree. If we have to recall why this even came before us, it was because of one individual just being belligerent and choosing not to move when asked to by a parent smoking marijuana or cigarette in front of his kid. I do not see our police department combing the bike path looking for smokers. Just like many of our ordinance in this city, they're complaint driven, and this is going to be complaint driven when there's someone that just blatantly chooses to disregard our ordinance here for smoking and just says, well, I don't care about it. I'm going to sit in this sandbox with those little kids and I'm going to smoke a cigarette. Now, our police department has an ordinance, says it is against city ordinance. It can be cited for it. But they're not going to be out there looking for the person. It's going to be the blatant violator that is just sticking their nose to the law and not being responsible to other people's space around them. That's how I see this thing working. And I really don't want to remove anything from it. I think the areas that are concerned, the RV park, I agreed, was a concern. Private rental areas for private parties, absolutely a concern. But I'm happy to approve this thing the way it is tonight for the second reading. And a year from now, if we find out that it's just completely devastated some of our park rentals, dog show left town because of the non-smoking area. By the way, the dog show, city administrator has the authorization to provide a smoking area in the RV park during the dog show. That's under his authorization, and if he chooses to do so, he can do that. But it's probably going to be a complaint-driven process, just like many of our other ordinances. So I appreciate your concern, and I appreciate you bringing it to our attention last time. Just the hours that it was presented to us, just our brains weren't functioning that we could even have this discussion that we did tonight. So I'm happy with this. Unless there's any other discussion, I'd like to we're going to have public comment on this. So
I don't know. If you pull an item off, do you have public comment?
It's your choice.
Yeah, we'll err on the side of caution. Who would like to talk to us about this item? There's not anybody left to speak up, but I just figured I'd give you a chance. Going once? Going twice? Never mind, nobody wants to talk to us about it. So let me say one last thing, and then you can make the motion and I can vote against it. I guess, I understand where you're coming from, and by the way, I appreciate you pulling it back off and looking at some of these issues. Tonight you're going to take one more right away from people to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And, frankly, I just can't go along with that. We pass laws and we take rights away, or we're in a republic, so we give our rights to our government to manage it for us. When there's a predominant bad thing that happens, and I just don't see it here. So, make your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move staff recommendations.
I'll second, but I just had the question about the signage. Do we not want to include any language about when available signage that represents multiple forms of smoking? If it's not a big deal to you guys,
I think I'd like to leave this up to because they know our intent that we would like to see signage when the funds are available, when it's appropriate. If there's a special area that there's really people are. When I use the word ignorant, that's not a derogatory. When they are ignorant of the law, not knowing the law in a certain area, maybe signs would have to be posted. But I'd like to leave that up to city staff for that.
Right, I mean, like the skate park, for example, where the complaint came from, being a little bit more clear about that. So you understand the intent, City Administrator?
I do, and in fact, I'm more comfortable, personally, more comfortable with the idea that we'll do an examination, try to, rather than to widespread signage, try to be strategic and exacting about where we're putting some of these, like the location you suggested. That seems a lot more manageable and practical to me. We have plenty of laws out there where we don't then, blanket signage everywhere. So this approach seems much more attainable and measurable.
Okay, thank you. So I'll second the motion as is.
Okay, and just my question to the city attorney was, when does this become effective? It becomes effective 30 days from today. So this would not affect the Flower Festival this year because it's a little late in their planning program to try to establish something.
It's a dog show.
It would affect the dog show, yes, indeed. Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, could we vote, please? And that passes 3-2. Okay, item number 12.
Mr. Mayor?
Sir.
The reason I voted no, I'm getting sick and tired of government telling people what they can and cannot do. I did it back in the 80s on the Board of Supervisors when they said you couldn't smoke here. And I really, as a former smoker, I smoked 3 packs a day and I quit. And, I didn't know what government, and I still don't think government should tell you where you can or you cannot smoke. You want to die eating, smoking cigarette, but you can't blow it in a girl's face.
Well, and I think it's reasonable that cigarette smoking is outside and away from others, and it's reasonable that it's not at athletic fields where kids are playing, but beyond that, and I've never smoked. Well, maybe a couple cigars. Okay, now item number 12, the internet fees. You're up, Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilman. What this item is about is and reading any staff report or anything is just to present a quick 30-second review of it, is through natural attrition of technology, we have upgraded our radio equipment that backhauls our Wi-Fi mesh. Well, the added benefit of this equipment that we installed is that it's at a low enough price point where you can connect a client directly on that layer of the network and basically get a huge improvement in your internet service that you receive at home. So after doing this for a while, the equipment is a little bit more expensive than the indoor CPEs that we provide. So because of that, and also the added costs of the backhaul, basically our pipe that we take out to the internet so people can actually connect to the internet out there rather than just our network, we have established these price points. So we have a mid-tier price point at $25.99 and a upper-tier price point at $35.99. And our nexus for establishing those price points was based on the cost of the equipment itself. So the CPE equipment that the people take home from the counter that we provide them, that is still city-owned, is basically paid for in 2 months. So when we look at the lower price point, $31 covered in 2 months at $15.99, $48 covered in 2 months, and then the $35, it's $80. So it takes a little bit longer, but it's still roughly in that area too. And of course, the other part of this too is being sensitive to competition. This is a competitive market. In some ways, we are not I've never said we compete with our incumbents, because we've always offered at a lower price point and a no contract and some of those things. So we still have all those benefits, but we still, because of the city utility billing, the no contract, the good standing on the utility bill, no deposit and everything like that, we kind of operate in a slightly different piece of the market here. So we're trying to provide something for folks who may not be able to otherwise afford it or be able to get the credit to be able to establish an account with one of the other providers. So, like I said, we had this unique opportunity, and we present it to the city as an option to provide internet and to follow along with the original idea of being able to provide internet service to the citizens of Lompoc. And I'm here for any questions, anything else I can bring to the table about this.
One of the other things that
Yes,
probably
sir.
drives your cost is, for the higher services, more bandwidth too, because you're having to buy bandwidth to provide these levels of service.
Correct, right. Right now, we are still operating on essentially what we had established previously, and we're doing fine. And that was all just part of our, like say, our natural upgrade process that we've been going through with the network.
Councilmember Humdahl.
I'm glad to see these plans, because I was on the council when we brought it in from the meeting we had in Florida and got it established. I'm glad to see what we're doing. Question I do have is that with the new system, the preferred plan and, of course, the premier plan, that's higher speed is what we're talking about than what we have now.
Yes, sir.
And I haven't any problem. I got two computers run on the existing system, but there's probably times it'd be nice to have more. But that $25.99 is still cheaper than any other company we have in town.
Pretty much.
And that's why when we told them we brought in, I think it was originally $19.99. Now it's down to $15.99. The price is right. The quality is there. You may have some little problem, but I've had it now ever since we opened it up. I don't know how many years it's been, and I haven't had that much problem with it. I may go to the faster one, but I have no problem with the $15.99, and I've been paying it that way.
And we've always said that it works. It works out there. There are plenty of people using it now, and thank you for that testimony to that effect.
Councilmember Costa?
Thank you, Marilyn. I appreciate you coming up and staying late. This, as you mentioned during the break, is a result of quite a bit of time and investment. And so I thought, it's such a big decision and such a big move forward, the community should really be aware of that. There are people at home watching, believe it or not. I'm told that often. So I figured this is a good marketing tool for this opportunity as well, for anybody watching to know now that there is new services being provided. But I do have a couple of questions, that being said. I'm glad you mentioned fulfilling the original idea of providing internet service to the citizens of Lompoc, because I think sometimes we get lost with Lompoc Net. For a while, I kept asking a lot of questions about it a year or 2 years ago, and it sounded like we were going more of internal usage. So we're using it for fire or police or whoever we were using it for internally. Or then it was, well, maybe it's just for commercial, or, and so now it's sounding like we're going back to providing quality service to residential, and that's based on the new opportunity that's come about.
Well, yes and no. Once again, the opportunity that this network upgraded afforded is basically all those things we've talked about in the past are still there. They're still as strong. They're still as positive as ever. But it's allowed us to push this to the residential customers. That's, I could get up here and I can gush about this network upgrade that we did and just how great it works, and this Ubiquity equipment is just the most wonderful thing since sliced bread, and I can go on and on and on, and then I can let Kenny take over for me and he can start over with the same thing, just talking about how neat this stuff is. And like I say, without getting into a whole lot of technical details and everything, it's like, yes, I think every one of you at one time or another have had a technology chat with me, and it's just like all of a sudden, let's start talking about this stuff. Let's go. And we can do that. And so my point is, you're correct. we have a lot of internal usage on this network. So, and we can get into our Comcast franchise agreement, and we can get into the wide area networking issue that we're going to be faced with, and how this network upgrade works with it. However, tonight we wanted to come to you with this announcement and also the resolution for the fees for the residential service. So that's sort of why we're just kind of focused on this area right now in this discussion, but all those other things you talked about, they're still there. And this is, like I say, once again, this is an awesome thing that we're doing here.
And I agree. I mean, it's a huge benefit. I guess for me, I'd rather it have come as a larger agenda item where we do talk about some of these more detailed aspects about why we are making these strategic decisions that we're making as a utility. But I understand why you're doing it, and I know that this needed to move forward, and it was a business plan, really, ultimately. So, Councilmember Holmdahl, I actually get the opposite story. My mom has service, and she pays $15.99, and you're right, it is very reasonable cost-wise, and so she can afford it. But that means I get to hear a lot about what's wrong with it. So I understand that there are benefits, but know that I get those stories about how challenging and slow it can be as well. Believe me, I will tell her about these upgrades right away and probably pay for them so I don't have to hear about those complaints anymore. But that said, just a couple of financial questions, if that's okay. The reason is I'm trying to really identify why we established this cost structure, because I know that that's the first question that I will be receiving. And you did comment to the fact that it's the 2-month payback period for the equipment, which makes sense for the first 2 months, but it's also, just so council is aware, it's not equipment that the user owns, it's equipment the city owns and that the user is leasing, and so it will return. And so maybe for the first 2 months there's justification for that, but what about the remaining months? What's the justification for the cost amount? So I was wondering if there was any thought, Mr. Wilkie, particularly about, I know that there is debt, there's internal interdepartment loans to the utility, if there's been any discussion about debt payback and if this will assist with that, and if so, what's the projection of that?
Because this is just starting, we don't have any projections of how widespread the two levels will be. But based on the existing levels, $9.99 and $15.99, we're projecting that the enterprise itself will be self-sustaining, including being able to pay back debt, beginning with the 15-17 budget cycle. This will just allow it to do that in a quicker manner. So it will all depend on the volume of service that is received at the 25 and 35 levels, how much more it will be able to bring in.
I guess what I'm trying to figure out is if we did any cost comparison with other providers. Now, there are benefits, like you said, no contract included, or those who don't have the credit to start an account, but those companies also have benefits of their own, 24-hour customer service, for example, online account management. They have their own benefits embedded in their programs as well. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out if there was cost comparison to other providers, and if so, how much lower we are, because that's a good talking point for me to say, hey, we're this percentage below market right now, and we provide relatively this level of service.
We don't have any figures, because the other thing, too, is it's also difficult to try and come up with a number of, I'll use the example of Comcast. Is it bundled? Is it on special? What's your contract? What's the current promotion? They operate in a space where they can react. So we have to take an educated guess, because as Councilman Holmdahl was saying, right, originally this service was introduced at $19.99 plus $5 a month for rental of the CPE, so at $25. And very quickly that had to get readjusted because there was no uptake at that price point. So we're kind of in that boat also. It's sort of like, we used a little bit of logic, a little bit of looking around, some type of metric. We tried to attach some type of metric that has worked for us in the past, that we've had in the past, and like I say, it came down to the CPE. That's what we were able to to be able to say, well, we can extrapolate these numbers, and that's where that came from. But at the same time, like I say, we're going to set a rate, and we could change it in 6 months. We could come back in a year and change our rates as far as that goes too, whether it be up or down, to adjust that. Done in concert, of course, with finance and such. So, like I say, as far as the cost comparison, it's just such a sliding scale. We had to pick somewhere to put our foot into the water, and these are the price points that we chose.
I wish you had a better answer than that. Only because I think that that's kind of hard to argue to someone when they ask me, well, where did these prices come from, right? So what am I, what's the apples to apples comparison with other providers? Like, I don't know, I'm relatively up to date and technical, but not that technical as you and your counterpart. So I don't know if we are providing the same sort of speeds and download capabilities that you'd be getting in a standard program from a provider.
City Administrator.
I'm not sure if, I don't have a better answer than Rich had, but maybe just to restate it a little, to answer your question maybe as directly, but maybe you'll still be dissatisfied with it. It is based upon our best estimation of cost of service and the need to recover costs. And that is an estimation based upon a presumed level of subscriptions that may or may not materialize, and we need to adjust from there. The problem with the apples to apples comparison is we really can't do that. It's like, from a legal standpoint, we're not even able to take the same sort of pricing structure approach that our competition is. They can choose to subsidize their internet service, for instance, through, as you mentioned, bundled packages. He can subsidize it with other services maybe that are more pricing flexible or pricing inflexible, and they can shift and move things around. We don't have that luxury. We basically have to offer up services at a self-sustaining price, and we don't have a way to hide our costs through other mechanisms.
And that's what I'm trying to figure out is do we have enough information to say that this is that self-sustaining price? It doesn't sound like we do right now.
No, because right now we're being entrepreneurial. We are making some investments and some assumptions about a market that we hope will materialize.
Thank you. And I don't mean to give you a hard time by any means. I think this is a really great benefit. I just wanted some more meaty discussion about it today.
Right, because even when you see the other competitors talk about the service they provide, they also talk about technology. We have fiber, old copper lines and things like that, and they go back and forth on things like that. So here we are, even with the cell phones, 3G, 4G, and all this and that. So when you add to the mix, what technology are we talking about here? There's a little bit of that gets into it too. That's really hard to try and quantify to do an apples to apples. It's sort of like, gee, if we had fiber to the home, yeah, that would be a different type of comparison. If we had a hybrid system, same thing, So there's all those issues. So I understand. Let's see what happens. We can come back and we can discuss this some more.
Councilmember Lingle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Rich, I was one of those customers, and I tried it, and it didn't work. It was because of the area in the town that I lived, city that I lived. Lived up by Beatty Park, and I guess we just didn't get a good signal. Will this new equipment, will that allow me to get a better signal? Well, if I do one of the upgrades, will I have?
Yes.
Okay. So, yes? The answer is yes. Okay. So I should try it.
Yes. Right. So we can get back to this technology thing. We're talking radio. So like all radio propagation, things like that, we get into some of those issues and everything. One of the bottom line things that we're trying to do, and with this, whether you're on the $25 or the $35 plans, is to get that device onto your roof. where you no longer have the obstructions of your windows, your stucco, your wood siding, the interference from your microwave or your cell phones or anything like that. That's the first thing that we are trying to get out there is get this thing on top of your house. You're going to get a better experience, period. So then the next part comes in, are you in a location where you can get onto the $35 plan? And that has to do with having it doesn't have to be line of sight, but it has to be near line of sight as far as to one of the 8 backhaul points that we have throughout the city. So I would assume up by Beatty Park, you can probably get to either the fire station or the police station. And as far as the line of sight, that's where we're backhauling our gateways that are on the Wi-Fi layer. So will you get better service? Oh, yeah. Yes, definitely. So it's just like, will it be on the $25 plan or will it be on the $35 plan? That's the variable, and that's why we also say in the staff report there, let us come out and do a survey of where you're located so that we can at least go in and say, okay, here's what we want you to try. Let's do it.
Okay, thank you.
So let me just, because Rich and I had a long conversation about this. So with the $25 program, you're taking the new Magic Box, which is roughly the size of 2 coffee cups put on top of each other, and it's aiming at one of our nodes on top of one of the utility poles, and it's responding to that. And so it's roughly 5 times faster. If, on the other hand, you can aim at one of the 8 antennas around town, and mine happens to be aimed from the top of my building at the police department antenna, then it is roughly 10 times faster, and mine runs at about 10.5 megasecond. And I'm pretty sure that you can stream something with that, and as soon as I figure out how to do that, I'll use it for that. But in the meantime, my internet works really good now compared to my old DSL, which used to lock up and do all kinds of strange things and cost a great deal more. So that's kind of the difference. And you should be able to hit the police station from your roof, no problem. Councilman Holmdahl?
Yeah, it's interesting to listen to the conversation on all this and such, and since I've been on it on Z Street and I've had it on Poppy, and I think the other problem you talk about could lose is somebody loses their balloons and winds up getting wrapped around that. So that's the only time I had a problem. But it's what's exciting about me is that it's the new upgrade. You know, I'm not one of those that needs that high a speed, but it sounds like for $25.99 it's better than $15.99. It's going to be faster and carry more information. And that's what it's all about. It's a business. You don't know what it's going to do until you get it put up. So it's a projection. It's like any other business going out there with any other type of project. You know it's good, but you don't know what it's going to do in the long range and how you sell it. And I think it's what we're doing. I have so much involved in it since I helped bring it in from the beginning of time. I think it's really excellent that we can go to the 25 or 29. The other thing when they talk about bundling, if you listen to the commercial and the ad for it, well, it's good for 6 months. It's good for a year. Yeah, then you pay full price. Then you know what the hell you're going to pay in a year or 6 months. That's good. That's there. We want to market that. We're not marketing that. We were telling what it's going to be, and then we'll have to modify it around it or whatever it's going to take down the road. But I think the plan is good. I'm really excited about it, and I know my wife probably talked me into getting an excess a month. But no, I've told a lot of people, so I have no complaint. You know, I don't know about the lady that says it's too slow, but I don't know how fast you want it either.
Well, if you want it fast, it'll be faster now. Okay. I'm going to open this up for public comment. Anybody here want to talk to us about this item? Don't everybody run down at once. Going once, going twice, gone. Okay. Thank you. I haven't moved anything all night, so it's my turn. I move that we adopt attached resolution 593214, establishing the internet service fees and tiered pricing.
Second.
And is there any further discussion? Seeing none, could we vote, please? That passes 5-0. Thank you. Oral communications, you're fine, I'm sorry, are there any written communications, City Clerk?
No.
Good job on the MOU. Oral communications, your last opportunity to talk to us for 2 minutes on any subject. Going once, going twice, gone. And we'll come back to council. First, I want to cover one item before we get on to individual reports, actually 2 items. We've had a discussion a number of times with regard to fireworks enforcement for illegal fireworks. And I just want to poll the council for the benefit of the city administrator, who was not here in 2013 when we began fireworks. And at that time, I said we should go out and write a ticket to every single person that uses illegal fireworks and put our enforcement program in place to do our very best with regard to that. And I'd like each council member to throw their thoughts in on that, please. Councilmember Costa.
What's the current plan for enforcement? I guess this is a little out of context for me, so my brain is...
Okay, so this is kind of, the city administrator was not here when we had these initial discussions, and is interested in our perspective on this, on enforcement.
Specifically, I'm trying to gauge an assessment of how aggressively or non-aggressively we handle enforcement on and around the 4th of July. The more aggressive we are, the more resources it takes, and also there are the policy consequences of being aggressive in enforcement. And also looking for a clarification of the difference between enforcement on illegal fireworks versus enforcement of safe and sane that's outside of the July 4th limitation.
You look troubled, Joe. Don't cause me any trouble.
I am troubled, Mayor. I'm troubled because what I'm hearing is seeking a consensus of the council on an item that's not on the agenda. So I have a Brown Act concern. And then in addition to that, I'm concerned with the council discussing some kind of process, some kind of enforcement criteria to be used, which, as you've heard me say before, if we're dealing with criminal prosecution, which is what a citation would be, that should really be a prosecutorial discretion that's used, and the council should never get involved with deciding how to enforce a code through criminal action, because we want to keep that prosecutorial discretion clean.
I knew you weren't going to be able to say anything, anybody, but I said my piece.
I'll just make it, I'll stop by and visit with you.
If Councilmember Starbuck goes by you to discuss with you, Mr. City Administrator, don't have anyone else sit down with you unless you bring it back on the agenda.
Well, let me raise a hypothetical with you. I think the reason this is being raised is because I had one member who came to discuss with me already, and I was for the same points you raise. I think, I am without the background of how this was handled last year, and I had a strong opinion being presented to me as to how aggressively we should be enforcing a particular ordinance, and I wasn't sure, not having heard from everyone, I wasn't sure I was going to be in position to be able to do that, because it seemed like an awfully aggressive approach. So perhaps we should just put this either we'll leave it, I can handle it on my own with the direction of staff resources on my own, or we can late hour add something to the next agenda, but by that time, it'll be, being July 1st, it would be too late for us to schedule the resources we need to schedule accordingly. So I think what I'm hearing is I just need to handle this on my own, and if it's not satisfactory, we can deal with it after the fact or plan in advance of 2015.
So let's try this. Could the city administrator review the council discussion in 2013 and draw inferences from that?
Certainly.
There you go. Off to the video. Okay, this next one is something kind of small and bizarre, and we discovered the other day when someone was trying to do a project that our parking ordinance requires that exactly 10% of the spaces be for compact cars. Obviously, in today's world, most people would like to have more than 10%, but we were not able to allow them to do that because of the way our ordinance was written. And in discussing that, the city administrator recommended to me a one-word change that would resolve the issue. And today, another project came forward that is on a very short time frame, and the exact same question came up. So I did ask the city administrator if he felt he could bring back that one-word change to us by next meeting, and he felt that that could be accomplished by next meeting. And so I would be looking for a second and a third to direct the city administrator to make the one-word change that he recommends.
Mr. Mayor, you don't think that there should be some additional discussion about the parking ordinance, generally speaking?
The Planning Commission has done a great deal of work on the parking ordinance, and if there were going to be a substantive change, it would have to go back to them and start that process over again. What we're really looking at here is just trying to fix this one microscopic issue, because we're pretty sure that the intent was never the way the ordinance was written.
I was privy to the incident, and I understand where it's coming from, and I support that.
Well, there's another one now. So we didn't get past, we found a creative way to solve the first problem, but now we have another problem, and there's no creative way to solve it.
Here's another one. Mr. Mayor, I just want to, and Council, I just want to let you know that I'm going to feel the need to review what it is that we're bringing forward, if you get enough votes to bring this forward, to be sure that I'm comfortable. It doesn't have to go back to the Planning Commission, because the state law directs when things have to go to the Planning Commission and when they don't.
Yep, do that too.
Marilyn, I'll be your second for that.
And any third.
City Administrator, do you need me to third this?
Yes. Yeah, Dwayne said he's a third, so done.
Well, I would, and I'm mindful of the city attorney's statement. We'll move heaven and earth if we can possibly do it to have it teed up for you in the next meeting. But and I understand we're dealing with a couple people that are a couple of customers out there that have time critical issues. But overall, it normally will take a little more time than this, particularly if we're talking about a code change. It's going to take more time anyway to get through.
So do you have enough time? Or, Marilyn, I'm sorry, I didn't know it was time sensitive, and I understand that we're way past deadlines for July 1, so I'm okay with moving it back to the second meeting in July or the first, meeting in August if needed.
Again, that would definitely be more comfortable in this particular case. I'm hearing if there's such a heightened urgency that people are going to be incurring tens of thousands of dollars of costs, for instance, or not be able to carry something out because of this not being resolved as quickly as possible. But even if we're talking about an ordinance change, it's got to get through 2 readings. And basically my deadline's tomorrow to have something drafted to be posted for the July 1st. That doesn't provide city attorney ample time to review. It is a relatively simple fix, I will say, to support the mayor's point. I do believe it's the addition of a single word to the code from being, in other words, we're talking about account, not to get into detail or discussion, but we're talking about changing from a certain percentage of parking spaces to being a certain percentage of required parking spaces. So it's the addition of the word required to additional codes. So we may be able to hyperactively process this.
And it could be, when we talk tomorrow about this, it could be just an interpretation that the city planner has the right to make as an interpretation of a code. And if that can be done, you don't need to have anything back from the city council. It's just an interpretation.
That's the concern, I think, is there's a feeling that it's been incorrectly interpreted, and we don't want that to happen in the future.
And you have a city administrator who's hearing an interpretation that he's comfortable with, and he's the one who's in charge of all the city staff.
I see what you're saying.
And I would say, I think the intent originally was for it to be required, but we do have at least some information has gone from some staff before I became aware of it, and the interpretations being made by other people that read it in its more literal sense rather than what I believe was its intended sense.
So with that said, I mean, Mayor, and the deadlines, would you mind pushing this out? You know, this is really going to help a couple of people. I understand that, but
no, it's really going to help a really large project.
We'll
if you can get it done, fine. If you can't get it done,
sounds like we'll commit to bring it back to you as soon as we can.
Yep.
And maybe we'll even work out a way we don't have to bring it back to you at all, and you still haven't accomplished
it. Between the city attorney and I, we may have this resolved tomorrow, and we'll just come back reporting it's been handled, which would be the most wonderful thing. If we need to go through a process that involves you further, we'll expedite that as quickly as time will allow.
And I will say, when the city administrator and I looked at the code, I didn't agree with him, and then I read it, and read it, and read it, and I was forced to agree with him, which is why we're having this discussion, because I didn't think it was going to come back up literally 2 weeks later with a much more serious consequence. Okay, let's see. So we got those handled. You start this time. You can do your report.
Have a nice flower festival.
Thanks. That our last SBCAG sub-regional, we again affirmed that we wanted to move forward with the list of projects that are in the measure as approved by the voters, rather than adding new projects, and the SBCAG staff will be bringing back the cost of those projects so that we can look at them and make a better decision. The one that is at the head of the hit parade is some sound walls for the Union Valley Parkway interchange, because the raised interchange has just created a nightmare for the residents there. I attended the volunteer recognition event at the Boys and Girls Club, thanking all of their volunteers, and there were a bunch of them. A program that Councilmember Costa's organization is working with to discuss a healthy living program, and I had about an hour and a half's conversation with them. And then last week, in knowing that Sid was coming this week, I gave my presentation to the Lompoc Unified School District on all the wonderful things we have going on at the city. They asked some questions. And over the last 3 weeks, I've worked with a number of economic development prospects, and a couple of them are pretty darn exciting. And had a long conversation yesterday with CalCog, our annual or semi-annual teleconference meeting, and the State Association of Governments is moving forward. We're finally getting off the ground and having some effect. We had some very effective lobbying on the AB 13 or AB 30, whatever it is, the greenhouse gas money. So a lot of it is heading back towards cities. And there was, in the state budget, that just passed, there's a fair amount of money that looks like it's going to be coming back to cities, but I didn't have time to read all 20 pages of it before tonight. Councilmember Holmdahl.
Yeah, I haven't been to any of the meetings. I've done a lot of touring of town. But what I got here is I was real pleased to see the article in the Lompoc Record on Sunday, June 15th, Business Tax Necessary Prudent Practice, written by the Economic Development Committee. And I thought she did a real nice job on this, kind of laying out what we're looking at and doing some business tax change down the road when we get to it. So not a negative, and more positive than negative, a lot more positive than what was in the paper today.
Two quick things. The first is that the Riverbend Bike Park is having another build day, so they are looking for volunteers, anyone who's available to volunteer. That's this weekend, June 21st and June 22nd. On the 21st, they're going to be mostly working with heavy equipment and operators, things of that nature, and then on the 22nd, there's going to be more of the smaller levels, forming and shaping of the track itself. So if you're available, please look them up, Riverbend Bike Park. You can Google them. They have a website. They also have a Facebook page with contact information to help build the BMX bike skills course. Second, I have an awesome story because I, as you know, sit on the board of the Community Action Commission, which really I've come to adore. They are a fantastic organization, and they run our Head Start programs here in Lompoc. And recently, the Head Start Policy Council met with the board as an annual dinner that we have, and we got to hear from each site some stories, and one of them was about a graduation at one of the sites in Lompoc. And the children had the opportunity to say what they wanted to be when they grew up. And at a lot of sites, they talked about firefighters or princesses or whatever. But there was this one young boy at the Head Start Center in Lompoc who said when he grew up, he wanted to be a winemaker. I thought that was an amazing, like such a cool story. So I had to make sure I shared that with you guys.
And I just want to throw one compliment to the city administrator. I've been very pleased since he's been here that we've had a little more access to talking to key staff when there's an item before council or there's a question, and that's made it a lot easier to understand things and go forward. And I hope everybody else on the council, when you have an item that you have some questions about, that you check in with the city administrator and then trot off to the staff person that can give you the best answer, because it sure makes life a lot easier. Let's see. So we are therefore adjourned.
Yeah, Bob didn't say anything.
Sorry, Bob.
You're
Did you do anything this last 2 weeks you want to report on, Bob?
Nothing real important.
Okay.
No, actually, nothing with city money, but I did attend on Wednesday the 5th. I attended the Community Advisory Board over at Vandenberg Air Force Base. And on the 12th, I attended Lompoc High School graduation. The other thing I touched on a little bit earlier, and Mr. Mayor, I'm going to leave this up to you trying to get it worked out, city administrator and everything, the length of our meetings. Councilmember Costa, I agree with you. I will be voting along with you next time not to extend meetings beyond, I think, a 130-minute extension should be all we really approve. If it's something that is time sensitive, we can always continue the meeting until 7 o'clock the next morning. We can table an item until the next meeting. For instance, the smoking ordinance, that could have been tabled till this meeting and starting it there. There was nothing time sensitive on that. But there are ways that we can shorten our meetings, which we have started this evening, putting some things that did not have to come for full discussion on the consent calendar. So, Mr. Mayor, I'll leave that up to you to try to shorten our meetings.
You know, I'd love to help you, but I don't do the agenda, so I can't help you.
Well, there are a couple things. We discussed it earlier, and I know you...
I mean, if you want me to start working on the agenda, then
No,
you
I
guys
don't.
need to make that decision, but it's not my job.
No, I'm not saying that. But there are things as the chair of this meeting you can do. we've discussed it earlier, and I know you don't want to do it, but if a meeting is running late, you do not have to allow 5 minutes for public comment. It's better to have a 2-minute public comment and have the meeting adjourn at a time when people are still awake, instead of having an audience, a very important audience, that is no longer with us. So just think about the times that we have the public comments going. The reading of the consent calendar, it took you maybe 5 or 6 minutes today, but it's never happened as long as I've been on the council with any other mayor. I don't think it's required. It's available on the internet. If people want to know what it is, people on television, they can be looking at TV at the time. They can come down here. If something that they've looked at that they're concerned about, they can come down here and discuss it. So there are certain things that you, as a chair of this board, can control. That's all I'm asking you, to look at the things that you're trying to control. And I see I'm within my 2-minute time frame. Thank you.
Yeah.
Time left. Councilmember Humdahl.
To follow up on that, some of the things we used to do at the County Board of Supervisors, if first we wanted to have everybody drop their name tags in early. In other words, if you're going to speak on a certain item, that was come in early enough you knew how many going to be there. And then you can cut it from 3 minutes to a minute and a half or a minute. So some of those things can be done. And if you have a large contingency on a program, so you can change that time frame. Other than that, I'm not too sure about shutting a project. If you have it listed and it's supposed to be talked about, it's awful hard not to do it.
Well, one of the things I would say is I would never reduce it from 5 minutes, because I remember trying to make presentations that made sense to the old council in 3 minutes and usually only getting 2 minutes and 30 seconds. But if you'll recall, when we've had a lot of speakers on something, I've taken the approach of who wants to talk for 1 minute, and typically 2/3 of the audience comes down and for the 1 minute, and then the 5-minute people, with a few exceptions, usually have a fairly in-depth presentation that they want to give. So it gives an opportunity for us to have good input from the public, which I value. I thought about the issue of the consent calendar, but people sitting at home watching us have no idea what we're voting for, and I think that 5 minutes is well spent. Tonight was probably the longest one we've ever had, and I didn't time myself, but I'll get the stopwatch out and see how long it truly took. So, and as for loading the agenda, in defense of the city administrator who makes up the agenda, he doesn't really know yet how long a lot of items are going to take, and some items that might appear to be fairly short turn out to be fairly long, and some are the opposite of that.
Mr. Mayor, I'm certainly not blaming our current city administrator, because there have been meetings that went well beyond midnight, even before he got here. I think it's just the general idea of us trying to discuss something that is very important, that can affect our city beyond our capabilities of doing it in a responsible manner, is what I'm very concerned about. And after the last meeting was a good example. We had staff that was here for 18 hours, and they had to get up and come to work the next morning. They're jeopardizing their health, their performance on the job, which the city relies on them. So there's a lot of things that impact meetings going beyond midnight, more than just us. Okay, I can sleep till 10 o'clock the next morning if I want to. I couldn't that day, though. So.
Yeah, and I guess from my standpoint, having been in the tow industry a really long time, I can work as many hours as it takes, so it's less of an impact on me. So we'll try to be more mindful of that. Councilmember.
Oh, I just wanted to mimic the thoughts. Was just it's been you all know it's been a huge concern of mine, and partially I think for the well-being of the folks who are in the audience, we're going to have to, it really is a balancing act, because for those people who came to speak, if they waited until 10, they should have that right, but we may want to poll and say, hey, who's here for this item, or we can gauge that during breaks, however we want to do that, but definitely being more mindful, and then also for our well-being, I don't think it's necessarily healthy for us to be sitting here for 3 hours at a time. Like, my body starts shutting down if I can't walk around. So just things to be mindful of, and I'm glad it was brought up tonight. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Last chance. Going once, Going twice. We are therefore adjourned to a regular meeting at 7 o'clock p.m. on July 1st, 2014. Thank you for being with us.